Good evening. I'd like to call our regular business meeting to order and ask the treasurer to call the roll for us.
Ms. Adair? Here. President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Present.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes. Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to ask Fort Hays student Plan Patrick to come to the podium. He is the winner of the City of Columbus Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Oratorical Contest. He's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please be upstanding.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll be hearing more from Mr. Patrick a little later on. He is actually going to present the speech that allowed him to win the contest. So we're looking forward to that. Let me briefly read through our agenda so we all know the work before us this evening. After we adopt the agenda, we'll hear from Mr. Patrick. After that, we will take up some board recognitions that we want to present and talk about this evening. We will then take public comment. We do have 8 speakers signed up to address the board this evening. We will then hear from our direct reports with their reports to the board, after which we will contemplate and consider our consent agenda, after which the board will recess into executive session after hearing announcements and points of pride from board members. Is there a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented? Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Ms. Adair?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown? Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, colleagues. Now, having said that, because we do have a number of speakers, does anyone object to us hearing from our speakers first? Well, yes, after Mr. Patrick. Any objections to moving that up? Okay. So thank you for your indulgence. What I'd like to do is ask Mr. Patrick to come back up to the podium, and he is going to present his winning oratory from this year's City of Columbus Martin Luther King Jr. Oratorical Contest. He is a young man with a mission to change the world, as I understand it. He attends Fort Hays Arts and Academic High School and is a 4-time winner of the oratorical contest. And I believe his mother is here with him. Would you please stand up, proud mother? Are you here? And I believe his principal is here too. Dr. Ruffin, are you with us? Thank you very much. Thank you. So, Mr. Patrick, having said that, the floor is yours, sir.
My name is Plan Patrick, and this is hyperventilation. Sometimes when you're black, it feels like you are trapped in a cage, in a room where the walls close you in until there was no space to move, in a cell where the bars whisper your name in an attempt to mock your freedom. The prison guard has 100 things to think about, but all this prisoner can think of is freedom. Years away from chains and whips, but still battling a world that does not want us to succeed. They call it the way we live. I call it a war of attrition. They're making laws to justify their acts of erasing a generation. No, that's a lie. They're making laws to justify the killing of an entire nation. They call it stand your ground. I call it you viewing my blackness as a weapon, but my skin is not the one pulling the trigger. We fight back, but retaliation is on a grand scale. We escape oppression, and you find another way to tighten the noose. Breathe. Breathe. Martin Luther King Jr. dreamed of a world where color will be celebrated. He led marches across state borders, delivered speeches that shook the nation, and took political action to make changes that one day his children would not be judged by the color of their skin. Are we accomplishing Dr. King's dream when young black men are shot down in our streets, when black men are incarcerated at 5 times the rate than white men? No, we're not playing the victim. We're trying to open locked eyes to a corrupt and unjust system. They're talking about politics and movies on TV, but what about the black community? We're on fire, being burned alive without a source of water to put us out. Through fire, the phoenix rises, but not when it is shot down, not when it is chained and shackled to boulders the sides of mountains. We just want a chance to spread our wings. We cannot rise up if we're continually being held down. One day I heard a man say that the word nigga brings us black folk a sense of unity. The word molds around black bodies in an effort to define us. It creates no sense of unity when that word is used by white people. It creates no sense of unity in young black boys who have dreams because no one wants to grow up to be a nigga. It becomes a word of hatred and draws a line between races, a line we've been trying to blur for so long. As black people, our unity comes from our vision of equality. It comes from our aching desire to breathe in a world that has been suffocating us for so long. With our chorus of voices, we demand justice. If someone ever insists we remain silent, we must intensify our cry for equality. Even through crushed lungs, we cannot be silent about the oppression in our world. We cannot ignore another black man as he yells out, "I can't breathe." And we can no longer let this country turn a blind eye and act like this is not a problem. I think the world has begun to think that maybe black just is the problem. Maybe black just is the problem. Maybe black just is a problem. Walk a mile in my shoes and see the problem that you have created. You have led young black children to believe that black is not the right color. To all those who have been misinformed, black is not synonymous with ignorance. Black is not synonymous with gangbanger. Black is not synonymous with drug dealer. If you're looking for new vocabulary, maybe add black excellence or even black splendor. We have let inequality wrap around us like a warm blanket, almost making us forget everything it has done. Inequality has wrapped around our vision, wrapped around our children, wrapped around our schools, wrapped around our places of business, and wrapped around bullets. Inequality has wrapped around our wraparounds, making it unsafe for all those who will come next. But I don't want my son to be born into a world where he is not promised life. His pep talks will not be about how to make kids like him at school or how to shave. They will go like this: "Son, put on your shirt and make sure it is buttoned to the top to the point of where you can't breathe. Make sure you look presentable. Although finely pressed clothing, it didn't stop them from taking image. You live in a world that will judge you with every step you take. Don't you dare pick up that hoodie. A black boy with a hoodie is like Rogue Hill on a Sunday. Although the Lord is watching, your death will still take place. And put on those shoes. And if they find you, run. Run as fast as you can because your fate is sealed once you are redirected to put up your hands. But if you find yourself staring into the barrel of a gun in that split second, when every moment in your life flashes before your very eyes, no, that's a lie. In that split second, when all you can do is accept the weight that has been placed upon your shoulders, black boy, just remember, black boys always remember to breathe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patrick. And would you do us the honor of coming up front for a photograph?
And Mom.
And would your mother come up as well? You look fine. Come right on up. And Dr. Ruffin, please come up and join us as well. Thank you for being here, Mr. Patrick, and thank you very much, Dr. Ruffin. Thank you. Well, how do you follow that? Let's prepare to invite our speakers up. So thank you very much to the 8 of you who are here with us this evening. A number of you have been here before, and we appreciate your return. Each of you will have 4 minutes to speak. You'll see a timer up on the screen behind me. I'll call you up one by one in the order that you signed up. I'll state your name, topic, and board action requested. The first one is Vladimir Kogan, and topic, forum held at Dominion Middle School on January 26th. Board action requested, adopt a resolution making clear that it will not consider changing the DMS school feeder pattern. Professor, good evening. Welcome back.
President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahorek, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. If I could have Mr. Patrick deliver my comments for me, that'd be fantastic. But in all seriousness, I think it was a perfect segue for what I'm going to discuss with you tonight. I'd like to start my comments with a brief recap from your last meeting. As you may remember, my wife spoke to you during public comments about the overcrowding issue at Dominion Middle School. And so I have a quick summary for you.
Lastly, I hope that at tomorrow's work session, you go on the record rejecting the suggestion that elementary schools be removed from the feeder pattern. So if a decision is not yet reached, we are still able to finally put to rest that part of the conversation within the Dominion community.
We've made some very clear statements that we are not in any way going to be closing off or taking elementary schools out of the feeder pattern.
And that in the absence of our conversation, people created narratives that do not belong to the Board of Education nor the Facilities Task Force. They don't reflect our values.
All right. Well, the board did not go on the record at the work session, and we saw the consequences. Just 3 days later, Board Member Ragland held a forum at Dominion, attended overwhelmingly by parents demanding changes to the feeder pattern. One gentleman sitting up front, Joey, raised his hand and said, to loud applause and nodding, by the way, quote, "The school is not the problem. The problem is the feeder pattern. It is too big." Neither Board Member Ragland nor Board Members Adair or Reyes, who were also in attendance, said anything. There was no clear statement, Board Member Brown. There was no indication that what Joey was proposing didn't reflect the district's values, Board Member Gibbs. There was just silence. In fact, Board Member Reyes at one point said, "We have asked the administration to study all the options." And I know that Joey followed up by sending all of you his PowerPoint slides laying out exactly the attendance boundary changes he would like to see made. And I don't think Board Member Reyes was wrong about having said that the administration has been asked to study all the options. I noticed that in the questions that you submitted to the administration, at least one asked about available capacity at Medina Middle School, although that question was submitted privately rather than at the public work session. As a parent, the most difficult part of Board Member Ragland's event was sitting right behind Joey, one of my son's 6th grade teachers, clapping her hands and nodding in agreement as Joey spoke. So can you imagine being a 12-year-old and seeing your teacher applaud and nod yes as someone makes the case for why you and other students from your elementary school should no longer be able to attend your middle school? And then looking over at the supposed leaders of your district and seeing them say nothing. It's time for the silence to end. Please have the courage to go on the record as a board and make clear that Dominion Middle School and the feeder pattern will remain unchanged. Until you do so, the Clintonville community will not have an honest conversation about the advantages and disadvantages of the remaining options that you are considering. And Board Member Ragland, Reyes, and Adair were there and they saw that, and I think they can confirm that that's the case. Joey, who's probably watching tonight, hi Joey, and the rest of the community are watching, and if splitting up the feeder pattern is inconsistent with your values as a district, as Board Members Gibbs suggested last time, you should be willing to put it down on paper. Values mean little if no one speaks up for them when they are threatened. 3 board members did not speak up for them on January 26th, and now you have another chance to do so, and your actions, or lack thereof, I think speak louder than your words. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Colleagues, are there any clarifying questions? Colleagues, Mr. Ragland?
Professor Kogan, thank you, first and foremost, for attending the event at Dominion. As far as I'm concerned, and I've already been on the record from this seat, nothing says anything with finality but a vote. And, you know, from my perspective, I'm going to hear every viewpoint that is out there until a vote is cast. I've asked to vote on this issue before. And if we do that today, I am ready to do so. As far as the other viewpoints that exist within that feeder pattern, there is no hiding that they do exist. There's no use in speaking on them from my perspective at this time. We need to vote on this, and we need to move forward, and that is what I've advocated for now. That's what I advocated for that day, and until we do, this will always be an issue. But thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you so much for your advocacy and that of your wife and the two young men that also come to pretty much every meeting. I do appreciate you.
If I'd have to just clarify, Board Member Ragland, I'm not asking for a vote on the actual Dominion issues. I'm just asking for a vote on making clear that you're not considering the feeder pattern. And I don't think those two issues are connected, and I don't see why you can't make clear that that option is not on the table before you vote on the other options.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you. And I, agree with Mr. Ragland. I've been consistent, and I think I've been clear throughout. You and I had some email discussion, and I explained at that time my view that we have a board policy, 7105, that governs closing of schools. And that's what was given to the task force at the time. And it contains a very clear factor for consideration that we promote diversity and that we factor that in. We also have other board policies that talk about the values of this board, including diversity and equity. And those are very important. I believe those policies govern this board and the actions that were taken by the task force, the recommendations they made, the recommendations that Dr. Stanford and his team have made to the board, asking us, recommending to us that we adopt those recommendations. I don't think it would be appropriate for this board. I think it would be inconsistent with those policies that we've adopted to do what some folks out there are suggesting.
Have you a question, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
I guess my question is, are you and your wife and others ready for us to act on the primary question, which is whether we make a decision about the future of Dominion, as well as the related question about the immersion programs?
I think we're certainly ready. I think some of your colleagues want more community feedback. And my concern is that the quality of that feedback is not going to be useful until people understand what the options are. And I think, as your colleagues can tell you, I think the people in Clintonville don't understand those options. They keep saying, well, why are we talking about doing this? The school is just fine. Just change the feeder pattern. And so I think you have to make that clear so that you can have that conversation, so you can have that finality, so that not just you two, but everyone is ready for that vote. And that's my main concern. I think that conversation is being derailed in Clintonville because this is kind of the option that everybody's holding up and saying, let's ignore all the other stuff. This is it right here. And I don't think your message about the board policies has penetrated that community. And I think having a clear statement would help.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other clarifying questions from board members? A clarifying question from Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much, Dr. Cogan, for joining us this evening, advocating on behalf of our students. You mentioned Clintonville on several different occasions. Who do you represent? What constituency are you actually advocating or speaking for?
I'm speaking, I think, on behalf of I'm representing nobody but myself, but I'm speaking here, I think, on behalf of the students in Columbus and on behalf of equity in the schools. That's my agenda. So again, I don't necessarily have strong opinions about what you do with Dominion, but I think it's very important to me, again, that the feeder pattern not change in a way. You can only change the feeder pattern if you want to take some of the Clintonville schools and move them someplace else. I would have no objections to that, but I would have strong objections to any changes that increase segregation by race or income. And I think that is the push that your colleagues heard from that community. And my main goal is to make sure that doesn't happen. And so that's why I'm here, to make sure that doesn't happen and to kind of make clear to you what the stakes are and how much push there is from the community. Again, you have the email, you saw the PowerPoint slides. You have a guy going around giving a PowerPoint presentation to folks, mobilizing them on this option. And so I think you need to put an end to that.
Other clarifying questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Other clarifying questions, colleagues? Okay. Professor Kogan, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for being here tonight. All right, let's move on to our next speaker, Stephen Hardwick. Mr. Hardwick's topic, Recommendation 3 of the Facilities Task Force. Board action requested adopt Recommendation 3 while respecting the integrity of the language programs. Mr. Hardwick, welcome back. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahorek, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. I'd like to first start by thanking the board for what it's done over the past 5 to 7 years, because about 8 years ago, this was the Dominion District. You notice Dominion is pretty much right in the middle of what the old district was, and it's pretty much only Clintonville and the wealthier parts of the city. And as the son of a minister and a social worker and a public defender, it feels weird saying wealthier part where I live, but that's the way it is in Columbus. But thanks to the board's actions in adding Como and Wineland Park, we now have this, a much bigger district, a long, skinny district. And long, skinny districts, one thing about long, skinny districts, it's really hard for them to be uniform, and it's really easy for them to be diverse in pretty much every way you can be diverse. And I thank you for that. And what this has done for Dominion is, as my friend Professor Kogan has said, it's a school that has done a fantastic job of pulling together all the communities that's been assigned to it. And the statistics show the kids who are struggling less, the kids who are excelling more. It's done a wonderful job of pulling kids together, and that's why I think, if it at all possible, if we can show fidelity to the language programs, I think it can work to move them in there, because what Dominion does is it respects the diversity of the kids. And if the language programs move in there, they'll get the same respect that every other kid gets in that building. And if that means mainly completely immersive subjects, then that can work. But there will, of course, have to be some English, because that's what the tests are in. That's what the third grade reading guarantee is. High school, they need some English. All schools need some English by state mandate, and this can help provide it. I also would like to thank Board Member Ragland, because I think that his meeting did show what I think is some of the ugly undercurrents. And I've never come to this board to say that Clintonville is unanimous behind this. But what I can tell you, I've met with the CAC, I've talked to PTAs, I've talked to community members. As part of the task force, I took it as my business to go all over the community. I put Mr. Varnum's presentation on a public Facebook page in August. Overwhelming consensus is in favor of this. There's been some ugly downside opposing, but when I've listened to the people opposing this, and this is what made it easier for me to go forward, I saw several main currents. Some of it was just people who didn't understand the math of putting schools together. People assumed that all 4th and 5th graders would become 6th graders at Dominion. That's not correct. I saw some immediate neighbors who said, I like the school being near me. It should be near me and not near them. I have also heard some ugly undercurrents. My wife was stopped while walking her dog because they knew that I was involved with the task force in the past couple weeks, and said, I don't want those people at this school. And there is a lot, and I think your forum brought that out, and that's an ugly, and I don't want those people to win. And I think the longer you leave this unsettled, the more those people feel empowered. And this board, I know you wanted to find more information, but the ugly side effect has been empowering of those views. And also, there's been conspiracy theories. I sit on the Zoning and Variance Committee. Someone at your meeting who spoke strongly against this came up afterwards and said that I must be working for a developer. I've heard that from many people. She said if this goes the other way, she will personally sue me and get the ACLU involved because she thinks I'm working for a developer. And I didn't just look at yes, overwhelming support of it, but I also looked at the quality of the opposition. What were the reasons against it? And they either didn't make sense or they were ugly. Dominion is a great school. If you include all the excluded kids, it's now at 164%. That includes the 634 that are there, plus the 60 excluded. It can work. It can serve the language kids. We can make it work. I don't want to force them into the program, but I can pledge to you as often as I've been here speaking to the board, I will show the same passion if the language programs are moved in to make sure that they are treated appropriately and with fidelity.
Thank you, Mr. Hardwick.
Thank you.
Any clarifying questions from my colleagues? Any clarifying questions? Yes, Mr. Ragland.
And once again, Mr. Hardwick, thank you so much for your attendance as well as your advocacy. One of the things that we are facing right now is that we live in a world with competing interests, and we just know and understand there are different viewpoints on pretty much every aspect of life in America right now. And the only way that we can really set things in order is by giving clear directives and what we can do from this stage. You've been a very vocal advocate. We appreciate the information that you continue to give us, and please don't stop. We really do want to hear more information from yourself and those in the public that are interested in seeing a decision being made on this. Thank you so much for your attendance and your advocacy.
Thank you, Board Member.
Any clarifying questions? A clarifying question from the Vice
Yes,
President.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hardwick. As always, I'm presenting your very wise case for what you're arguing in terms of equity. I guess my question is, has there been any dialogue or feedback on behalf of your communication with our administration about your concerns with regard to how the impact of a change in this feeder pattern may have on grade band, may have on equity or distribution of resources in the district? So it's kind of a double-edged question here that the administration, Mr. President, respectfully could help us answer to be able to deal with this issue, I think, and be able to answer the question on our end. But has there been any dialogue or recommendations that you presented the administration to review that could help us make our decision?
Well, first of all, I think the recommendation 3 really was the result of a large number of public meetings. The overwhelming support, the people who showed up at the meetings supported it. We've discussed the grade bands have been discussed thoroughly, and I've heard them discussed thoroughly at the Facility Master Plan Committee that Board Member Gibbs was in charge of, as well as the more recent facilities. I'm starting to lose all the difference in the names.
No worries.
But we did seriously consider that, and the administration has answered every question we've gotten. They've made it clear, and what the administration has told me has been consistent with what I heard, especially the people at Ecole Kenwood who were very clear. We want middle school grade banding, and that's one thing we consistently heard at the master plan. We want middle schoolers need time to be middle schoolers. They're changing. There's all sorts of changes that go on in their lives. Middle schoolers are different than elementary school kids. They're different than high school kids, and they deserve their own place. And I hope that we can make it I hope that Dominion can be a safe place in the North Building for all the kids who can serve.
Thank you so much.
Any other clarifying questions, colleagues? Thank you, Mr. Hardwick. Thank you very much. Next speaker is Tiffany Grinstead. Topic: facilities move regarding DMS. Board action requested. Accept the task force recommendations to move the DMS and language programs. Ms. Grinstead, good evening. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. think I got that right. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you today. I'm here to provide a slightly different perspective, which is many of you know that I've been part of the Whetstone pathway since my kids were in elementary school at Indian Springs. I now have a freshman at Whetstone High School and a freshman at Ohio State who I think thanks to her Columbus City Schools education, won a full tuition scholarship through the Merrill program. So thank you for having a great school district for her to learn and grow in. I'm here because we have been talking a lot about Dominion, like Dominion is a pathway, but it's not. It is the Whetstone High School pathway. Dominion is a middle school within the Whetstone pathway. We have numerous elementary schools within that pathway. And I think it's really important not to lose sight of the fact that we have a high school at the top of this hierarchy that has plenty of space for all of our pathway elementary schools. In fact, we have about 40% of our kids come from lottery. We have 140 plus English as a second language students in a special program at Whetstone, and it works very well. And we welcome all that diversity. I always tell people Whetstone High School is probably one of the most integrated schools in the country. It's about 53% minority. It is vibrant socioeconomically. It is not a Clintonville school. I happen to live in Clintonville. I happen to be the president of the PTA at Whetstone. I'm not speaking today in that capacity, but I spend a lot of time in that school, and it is not a Clintonville school. It is not. It is a school that has Clintonville families in it, Wineland Park families, Salem families, Como families, families that have asked desperately to be part of this pathway by filling out their lottery forms and coming into this community to make it better and stronger. And so as you consider what to do with Dominion, I think it's really important to remember it's part of a broader pathway. So removing elementary schools makes absolutely no sense from a pathway that has worked really well at the high school level and in fact has the seats for kids to come into at the high school level. When you think about expanding Dominion to the North High School building, which quite frankly, if Dominion doesn't go to North, I don't know where it goes because that's the only building in our pathway that has room for it. I understand it has some issues from a facilities perspective. Guess what? So does the current Dominion building. I know because I spent 10 weekends painting it myself 3 years ago with a group of parents and my husband and several other folks. So we can move from one facility that needs work to another facility that needs work, and we can make enough space for all the kids. We can bring language kids in and give them a great experience, and we can strengthen the Whetstone pathway, which I think is something for Columbus to be really proud of. Because it is special, it is an integrated school, and it does allow students from all walks of life and all socioeconomic areas and many, many neighborhoods to come together to be one community. So I would ask you to please consider approving what the task force recommended and the interim superintendent supported. And that's to say, I was not on this last task force, but I was on the previous one. Task force members like Stephen and many of the other folks, they give a lot of time and energy to this. They look at a lot of data and listen to the public and listen to you. And so it's respectful to listen to what they have to say. And so I hope that you will do that. And I thank you for your time. There was a question about grade banding in the last one, which Stephen brought up. I was on the former task force, and I would say if you're interested in knowing how people in the city feel about grade banding, go back to the survey data we did for that task force. They don't want 712s. They just don't. The survey data makes it so clear. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Grinstead. Are there any clarifying questions? And colleagues, I'm looking for clarifying questions. Mr. Brown?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for the additional perspective that you've brought. I think it's helpful to have that additional perspective. So keep it up.
Thank you.
No question, Mr. Brown?
No.
Okay.
Just
all
a
right.
thanks.
Very good. All right. Mr. Vice President, this is a clarifying question.
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so very much for being here and again offering that alternative perspective. With that in mind, are you advocating that we do make the decision to move Dominion into Columbus, the current Columbus North International School, that for our listening media is housing students between the grades of 7 through 12. Are you looking to move that population of students? Are you supporting that concept?
I do support the move of Dominion students into the North Building, making a middle school option for language families, because I know language families don't like 7-12 from being on the last task force committee. And I do think the North Building is probably the only option that we have for dealing with both the North issues and potentially getting our immersion families into a more traditional middle school that can strengthen the immersion program. So hopefully it doesn't fall off in those critical middle school grade bands.
I thank you so much for that. Now you have just a blurb of what it is that we have to consider on our side of this discussion, because there is this concept of what you're concerned about, and also, again, the fidelity to our immersion program. So thank you so very much for your understanding.
Other clarifying questions? A question, Mr. Ragland?
And I want to be clear, you began your testimony discussing the need for the Dominion move because of Whetstone, and specifically around the diversity at Whetstone, correct?
Both the diversity and, quite frankly, the fact that if you remove elementary schools from Dominion, it has a ripple effect to Whetstone. Whetstone's not completely full, even with all of our feeder pathway elementary schools. Right. So it doesn't make sense to make decisions at the middle school level that have an adverse impact at the high school level.
Absolutely. So then my question would be to the administration. Do we have the ability to isolate Clintonville as a community and determine the number of school-age children from K through 12 in just one community?
But we don't think of it as Clintonville's school, though. Whetstone is a bigger pathway, right?
I know, but
Okay.
I'm asking for another reason.
Mr. Baker, to Mr. Ragland, I just want to make sure I understand your question. Are you asking us, are we able to identify all of the Columbus City school students who reside in the Whetstone feeder pattern?
School-aged, yes. That's if.
Yes.
Or as the community of, like, the boundaries of the neighborhood of Clintonville. Right, that's all I'm asking.
Mr. Baker, to Mr. Ragland, yes, I believe we can, as long as we're just talking about Columbus City school students.
Sure, yes, sir. That's all I'm asking for. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other clarifying questions for the speaker, colleagues? Ms. Grinstead, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Watson. Topic: Foundation of a Successful Middle School Immersion Program. Board action requested. Vote on an agreement for a successful middle school immersion program. Ms. Watson, good evening.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm kind of short here, so hold on. All right. Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. My name is Sarah Watson, and I'm an Ecole Kenwood parent. The Board of Education should be proud of the elementary immersion programs that exist in CCS. These schools are hidden gems. They draw from a diverse, citywide pool of kids and produce great academic outcomes. Now, I have attended many board meetings since last summer, and I, like many other immersion parents, have been excited to hear so many board members publicly state their commitment to building what Board Member Adair last week called a top-notch immersion program in CCS for our middle school and even high school students. But although I've heard many board members express support for immersion, I've also heard disagreement about how best to structure such a program at the middle school level. My worry is that competing views on this question will keep any program from getting off the ground. This would be a mistake. So tonight, I want to discuss two things. First, I want to address a specific concern raised by some board members as to whether an embedded program such as the Dominion Plus proposal can retain fidelity to the ideal of immersion. I want to argue that it can. We immersion parents want our children to experience a true immersion middle school education, which requires at least 50% of instruction in the foreign language. So immersion means more than just taking a foreign language class. Offering additional language classes in new languages is also not sufficient. Immersion education requires that at least some of the instruction in core subject matter also be taught in the target language. So for example, at Kenwood, our exiting 5th and 6th graders receive 50% of their instruction in French and the other in English. So the goal of an immersion middle school should be to continue this level of instruction in the foreign language. So one of our goals is for our kids to be able to continue their immersion journey. But there is a constraint that the board should be aware of as we think about designing an immersion program. In order for such a program to get off the ground, we need to ensure that parents are excited about sending their children to such a program. But parents of immersion students have more than just immersion in mind as they're making the educational choices for their children. For example, some key features of parents that I've talked to at Kenwood that they would need in middle school are ESL, accelerated courses, and GT services. So if a new immersion program were not to include such services, there's a strong chance that parents will simply send their children elsewhere, and the program might not get a real chance to take off. It's this second point, the provision of additional services and accelerated programming, that make an embedded program such as the Dominion Plus proposal attractive to many of the immersion parents that I've spoken with. I encourage board members not to delay on voting on an immersion proposal because of vague notions that embedded programs such as Dominion Plus somehow don't provide an authentic immersion experience. Successful embedded immersion programs exist around the country. And in fact, you guys might not know this, but an embedded middle school immersion program existed once upon a time in Columbus City schools. Many years ago, before Kenwood and Spanish were turned into K through 8, they were just elementary schools. And at that time, middle school kids were sent to an embedded immersion program at Mifflin. Okay? Kids took half their classes in Spanish or French and the other half in English. I've spoken to alumni of this program, and they have very positive things to say about it. So embedded immersion at the middle school level, it can work. It has worked, and it does work. But it requires a commitment from district officials to developing students' language fluency and their other academic needs. So that's my first point. The second point is that regardless of how the board feels about an embedded program, I want to urge you all to make a firm commitment to middle school language immersion in whatever form, be it standalone, be it embedded, starting in the 2020-21 school year. A firm commitment and timeline are required in order to ensure that families who are deciding whether to keep their kids in immersion elementary will have an incentive to stay at their schools for 6th grade. If the board doesn't make a commitment soon, many parents of our 5th graders will choose to send their kids to other schools for 6th grade rather than stay at Kenwood in the uncertain hope that an immersion middle school program will emerge. This would be a loss, both for immersion families and CCS. Please don't let us down.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions for Ms. Watson? Any clarifying questions? Thank you, Ms. Watson. Thank you very much. All right, our next speaker is Natalie Martin. Topic, extending immersion education within Columbus City Schools. Board action requested. Vote on creating a new academic pathway for immersion families. Ms. Martin, good evening.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. I'm coming as a parent of 2 students in the immersion program. And first, I would like to say that I am a graduate of Columbus City Schools, and all of my children have attended. My oldest son just graduated and went off to the Marines. But one thing that I believe that most of the immersion parents can agree on, at least the ones whose children came in the program around the same time as mine, is that when we made the decision to sign them up, my daughter, she started kindergarten, I believe, 2010 or 11. She's in 7th grade now. We were secure in the fact that they would be in the same school with their peers, learning another language from kindergarten all throughout middle school. Unfortunately, because of whatever happened with the promises made prior, the rug was pulled out from under us, as well as the wonderful staff members. And being a part of Columbus City Schools all my life, I understand that things change, but I feel like there has to be a better way to go about these changes other than constantly shuffling kids around, which is what I'm feeling like is happening right now. Because, I'm sorry, let me. So, I would like to see a program that allows the kids to stay in the immersion program if the families choose to. My 7th grade daughter, who receives gifted services, she's currently taking 8th grade math and an accelerated gifted English class, would have liked to attend international with her friends, but they didn't have any gifted services available. So that was one disappointment. She now goes to, for both of her subjects. So she now goes to another middle school where she had to adjust to not knowing anybody there. And we've had a lot of adjustments this year, so that's been very difficult for her. And the other thing is that my son, who is in 6th grade, we have to make a decision for him. I don't feel comfortable with him being in a school with high schoolers because it's his maturity level. I feel like he would be trying to focus too much on being older. So I would prefer to him to go to a middle school, but I would still like him to stay in the immersion program. And so right now I'm faced with a lot of uncertainty. And so what I would like to see is an option that would allow not only all the immersion programs to continue through 8th grade, but also to make sure that the extra services, such as gifted services, are able to stay in the program. And I would like that decision to be made soon because I feel like we keep kind of getting pulled in different directions. And I would like a clear path for the children in the immersion program. And again, I would like to say thank you and appreciate your willingness to hear from the people who are most affected by these decisions.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Are there any clarifying questions, colleagues? A clarifying question, Mr. Vice President?
I would love to know from the administration if there is gifted and talented offerings at Columbus North International for our 7th and 8th graders. My personal experience has been that there has been. More importantly, that these students have the opportunity to engage in AP courses as high school students. Have you been to the school and kind of walked through the school, visited, seen the culture of how these students are separated? Have you had that opportunity?
Actually, for my daughter's situation, she tested to be able to take 8th grade math, and then also the English program. It was she was given the option to either continue with her gifted services that she was receiving at the school, or go to Sherwood because they offered those both of those services. So when I was looking at the other schools, there wasn't, because not all of the middle schools were offering for the 7th graders to take the 8th grade math course. So yeah, there wasn't in that particular program, at least at the time when I had to make the decision for her, there wasn't an option for her to be able to do both of those things, at least that I could find.
But did you visit the school?
No, I didn't. Because
okay. Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions for Ms. Martin? Ms. Martin, thank you very much for coming down tonight. Our next speaker is Megan Foley. Topic, DMS to Columbus North International High School. Board action requested approve the proposal from the task force and commit to not changing the DMS feeder pattern. Good evening, Ms. Foley.
Good evening. President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahorek, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Internal Superintendent Dr. Stanford. Thank you for having me to speak this evening. I'm here to address two issues. I'm asking the board to make a commitment to maintain the Dominion school feeder pattern of elementary schools, which would then feed to the Whetstone High School. And I am also asking the board to act to adopt the Facilities Task Force proposition recommendation number 3. I am here as an experiential witness. I've had the great good fortune to be a part of the Dominion community for the last 6 years consecutively. And during that time, I have watched our school grow and expand, both in programming and in feeder schools. We have grown from a school of 400 parents, students, to a school that is bursting at the seams with over 630 students reporting to school every day. Our administration has done incredible, thoughtful work in working to build a community amongst these students from very diverse elementary schools. They start their day in Town Hall, and all of them are together at Town Hall. The school works together to have fantastic Fridays where students from various elementary schools work together in teams across grade level, across ability level, across program level to accomplish goals, win prizes, have fun. It is incredible. Our success is our diversity. Our strength is our diversity. And we have a wonderful problem. We've outgrown our space. And so we're asking the board to make a decision to move us into a space where we can continue to grow, continue to build more programs, continue to spread our success to more Columbus City schools, to more Columbus City School students. I'm also asking the board to commit to maintaining our elementary feeder pattern regardless of whether it adopts the Facilities Task Force recommendation, because I think only when the board makes that commitment will it become clear to some parents who may be naysayers because they are afraid of change or because they are afraid of diversity. Only then will it be clear to them that it's either accept the status quo and some modulars in the parking lot or move into a new building where there's enough room for us to grow and to succeed and to be the burgeoning program that we are. Over the past 6 years, I can say that our school has become more successful with the addition of both an additional feeder school and with the addition of the gifted services and the special education services that we are now housing. We are meeting more benchmarks, more students are achieving honor roll. And I have to say, being welcoming and inclusive is a 21st century skill set that Dominion students are learning because they go to school with so many kids that don't live right next door to them. And so I'm asking the board to both approve the Facilities Task Force recommendation number 3 and to separately commit to not changing the feeder pattern for Dominion, because I think that that gives our community the best option to move forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Foley. Are there clarifying questions for Ms. Foley, Mr. Ragland?
Thank you, Ms. Foley. Are you aware of, you said the school is bursting at the seams. Are you aware of what happens? I mean, if we're bursting at the seams right now, what happens to the students who would like to go to Dominion but cannot?
As I am anecdotally aware, there are children who live within our feeder pattern who, for one reason or another, have been deferred from attending Dominion and had to lottery to a different school because there was no room at the inn.
Thank you. So then my question goes to the administration. So say I either live in the community or I'm assigned to Dominion and I'm told that I cannot attend Dominion. How is that determined? And then what are my options as, you know, as a student and a family? What happens to me next?
President Baker, to Mr. Ragland, if I understand your question, how do we determine if a student who lives in a feeder pattern is not able to attend that school is that we don't have space available at that school.
Right.
And so then we provide the families with alternative options, you know, for them to consider in that situation. And so with Dominion, my understanding, we will confirm this with our registration office.
Yes, sir.
But my understanding is that in Dominion's situation, we have assigned roughly about 58, 60 students who live in Dominion feeder pattern or attendance zone that have been assigned to another middle school because of a lack of space at Dominion.
Is there a specific middle school where those students go, or are they assigned throughout the district?
That I don't have off the top of my head. We'd have to get back to you with
Yes,
that
sir.
information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other clarifying questions for the speaker? Seeing none, Ms. Foley, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Anne Blankenstein, and topic, importance of continuing the language immersion programs through middle and high school. Board action requested make a decision in a timely manner concerning the future development of the immersion programs. Good evening.
Good evening. President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. My name is Anne Blankenstein. I'm nervous, excuse me. I'm the mother of 2 children at Ecole Kenwood, and I'm the president of the Ecole Kenwood PTO, as well as a proud and successful graduate of the Columbus City Schools. I would like to begin with expressing my sincere gratitude to and appreciation for each of you for your time and commitment to the betterment of all the students and families in the Columbus City Schools. My experience with the school board began 2 years ago when my first child was entering kindergarten, and I attended the Master's Facilities Planning meetings. This year, I have attended almost all of the Facility Task Force meetings and 1 school board meeting prior to Thanksgiving. I would like to thank you for creating the Facility Task Force and considering their hard work and their final recommendations. I have come to understand all of the final options and scenarios presented, and why some of the options, while looking good on paper, are not truly viable options for Columbus as a district or the students served in our communities. Columbus Public Schools is a large district with many complexities. I am here tonight to focus on the foreign language immersion programs. I want to thank you again for providing such diversity of choices for all of the children in the city. All of Columbus students have the opportunity to attend Ecole Kenwood. I feel so lucky that mine got in. As a 100% lottery school, Ecole Kenwood is truly one of the brightest lights Columbus Public Schools has ever created. I've been immensely impressed with the quality of the staff, the positive atmosphere, and the excellence in education I witness at Kenwood every day. Offering focused immersion education at this level of quality is really notable in such a large district. I'm a child care licensing and a Step Up to Quality specialist, and I evaluate learning environments for children on a daily basis. And I can attest that the learning environment that you have created and nurtured for the past 30 years at Kenwood is excellent. I implore you tonight to approve the creation of a timeline for expanding the language immersion education within Columbus schools to the middle and the high school years. A dedicated timeline will allow our principals and families to begin concrete conversations with district officials about best practices moving forward. While I support the task force recommendation to move the current Dominion Middle School to the North High building and embed a language immersion middle school program at that site, I do not see that as the only option for the board to consider when fulfilling your promise to the immersion students and families to extend the programming beyond the elementary school years. In meetings I have attended with board members and families, the question of why creating a standalone immersion middle school would or would not be preferred. In a world with endless resources, a standalone program would be a possibility. But with the reality of the complex issues facing CCS, it is neither realistic nor necessary. An embedded language middle school program is actually superior. An embedded program would ensure our kids have access to an array of classes and extracurriculars. As been stated by the board, bigger schools are able to provide more diverse programming to more students. Kenwood is a successful program. We have 17 academic classrooms and very long wait lists. However, at this point in time, after 5th or 6th grade, the district is choosing to scatter the kids to the wind instead of continuing to build upon this success. The involvement and commitment of Kenwood families is intense. When speaking to Fidelity when creating a new program, I'm confident that with the collaboration of the district, administrative leadership, and the immersion community, and community input, Fidelity will be achieved. The current pathway to Columbus North is just not a viable or appropriate options for immersion students. Over the past 3 years, few to none of the Kenwood 6th graders have chosen to attend international as it cannot meet their educational needs. This is not a sign of a well-functioning pathway. In closing, I ask that the board makes a commitment tonight to expand language immersion programming starting in the 2021 academic year. Please do not let us down.
Thank you, Ms. Blackstone. Are there any clarifying questions? Any clarifying questions for the speaker? Thank you very much for taking the time to be here tonight. Our next speaker is June Moretta. Topic, extending and expanding immersion education within CCS. Board action requested, create a new academic pathway for immersion families. Good evening.
Good evening. President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Baharik, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Having recently attended Board Member Ragland's community conversation, I would also like to give an additional special thanks to Board Members Ragland, Reyes, and Adair for speaking with community members that would be impacted by building and programming changes concerning the Dominion site, including the immersion schools. At the Spanish immersion, where my daughter attends, and I am the family ambassador, she is in the 5th grade. So this directly affects our family and our school. Parents have expressed an interest in continuing dedicated immersion programming. Initially, Task Force Recommendation Number 3, offered by the district, allowed that to happen, but it would happen within the larger setting of Dominion after relocating to North. However, years prior to that, the district allowed us to successfully flourish as immersion K-8 schools. Then that success was disrupted by placing our 7th and 8th graders with high schoolers at Columbus North International. We would ask that the Board of Education commit themselves again to listening to the needs of the immersion programs, to design a model that works best to facilitate bilingual education. There are many options for such programming, such as a standalone immersion middle school or to revisit the K-8 model. However, as it has been previously stated, the 7th through 12th grade model is not the best model for the immersion families. So, time is of the essence as lottery deadlines draw near, and immersion parents need time and good information in order to decide what is best for their children. Thank you.
Are there clarifying questions, colleagues? Clarifying questions for the speaker? Yes, Ms. Gibbs.
I'm going to speak to all the speakers in general. I held my tongue on the end, but thank you all for coming, so thank you for coming. I just want to clarify what I believe I've heard up until now. And I know after the presentation, we've had a number of, we had recommendation 3. But what this additional time has afforded us is to hear from more people from inside all of the pathways. And I really appreciate hearing from you, because I don't know I would have heard from all of you previously had we not extended this time to hear different viewpoints and different sides. I think this time has also afforded us and afforded members of your community to understand the different belief systems of some of your neighbors, and understanding that not everyone is monolithic in their thought. And even though it appears to affect one community, because we are in an open enrollment district, we have to make choices where any student would walk inside that building, whether they were from Clintonville or the Walnut Ridge feeder pattern or Briggs or Brittany Hills. Any student from any part of the city is welcome and open to participate in our lottery. And our goal here is to make sure not only the facility fits, but the culture and climate is welcoming to the families. And this particular recommendation was not just about moving families, it was about adding a very strong unit in both Kenwood and Spanish Immersion, and one that we haven't heard of and one that hasn't been very visual, but that's the Hubbard feeder pattern. And thank you for the Hubbard team that's here. But that when we think about moving students into a culture and climate, that people, we know where we're putting our children and who we're going to be around them and the attitudes that they will meet when they walk in the door. And we take none of those decisions lightly. As you know, I am a huge proponent of immersion programs, and I've heard, what I've heard tonight and over the few months is that students and families from Dominion want to move to North. I've heard they want to keep the feeder pattern together and not move any of the elementary schools. I've heard you say, and I want to clarify, you want us to support the immersion programs, that you are open to moving to Dominion, but you want us to stay at the table to continue the conversation about fully developing a middle and a high school pathway for the immersion programs, which would encompass French immersion, Spanish immersion, and Hubbard, which is our Mandarin Chinese pathway, and that somehow we have to fix the perception, the thought, or the attraction of international high schools, because currently our immersion students and families are not attracted to the current international high school model that we know from our facilities master plan and our work that our families do not desire to keep a 712 pathway, and that in order for that to happen, we need to reimagine what international currently looks like, because having 7 through 12 is not what the current immersion families are willing and they will not participate in sending their students to. Is that correct? Does that sound about right?
Yes.
All right, that is my clarifying.
Thank you.
Okay, that's what I heard. That is what I heard.
That was your clarifying question, Ms. Gibbs?
That was my clarifying question.
It was a good one.
It was a big one, and it's taken a lot for us to hear. And I thank you, Board Member Ragland. You went out on a limb to bring people into the community, and we get all your emails, we get all of your feedback. And we have to balance what you say is competing interests. And you've heard the competing interests at this microphone week after week. But I do believe we are ready to begin to vote. So if the administration can ready the data and the information that we need, if I'm right, we leveled a series of questions at the last meeting, and I know you're working on them, but I think we needed to find out capacities, numbers, how much a building could hold if it held 6 through 5, or what would that number look like? Could you put science labs in the current French and Spanish immersion so they could go back to K-8? And if the answer is no, so we know that. But we need that data to come back so that the full board with our 2 new members and members who weren't here when those decisions were made, we're all working with the same set of data, and we can be ready to vote expeditiously. I think the information is laid out in a way, but what isn't laid out is the work that has to come, which is working on what immersion looks like, looking at those national models and figuring out how that work goes there. And we just don't send you there. Like we sent Kaz to McGuffey as a temporary spot, and 30 years later, they're still there. So if I don't believe in finite, I believe if there's a middle school to come, then you have to work towards that. But we want to make sure, if I'm hearing you right, that work doesn't just stop. We put you there and then we forget about it. Is that right? That's my clarifying. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your questions, Ms. Gibbs. Are there other clarifying questions specifically for the speaker, Mr. Brown?
I just wanted to thank Ms. Gibbs for her comments and for her clarifying question, and for, at least from what I heard, from allowing your perspective, as you've heard from more people, to evolve and develop. And I'm pleased to hear that, that as a result, we're closer to being able to actually vote on this. And just thank you.
Okay, so not a question, but thank you for offering that. Other clarifying questions, colleagues? Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone who came tonight to address the board very much for your time. I know you're busy. You've all got a lot of things to do, so thank you very much for continuing your advocacy on behalf of our students. We appreciate it. Yes. No. So thank you very much. Please do feel free to leave if you have other places you need to be, but we'd love to have you stay if you'd like to participate in the rest of the meeting. And colleagues, let's move on then to the next item. Go back to the agenda as it was presented, and that is a couple special board recognitions. The first one is item 4.1, and this is a resolution recognizing February 4th through 8th as Relationship Week 2019. I'd like to ask Ms. Cheryl Ward and any of her staff she'd like to have join her to approach the podium. And one of my colleagues is prepared to offer a resolution, and I'd like to ask you to do that at this time. Board Member Reyes, is that your resolution?
What does that mean? The relationship with? Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought you were doing the counselors. I apologize. Hi, Ms. Ward.
Board Member Reyes, go right ahead.
Thank you. So Columbus City Schools resolution to recognize February 4th through the 8th as Relationship Week 2019. Whereas caring and supportive relationships are critical to students' learning and well-being, and whereas each day, Columbus City Schools staff, students, families, and community members work hard to build supportive, inclusive, and positive learning environments. And whereas Relationship Week is designed to emphasize the power of simple acts, such as saying hello to a stranger, providing single acts of kindness, forgiving others for real and perceived transgressions, ensuring no one eats alone, and reinforcing that we are safer together. And whereas a key aspect of our spirit of success is a demonstration of compassion, respect, trust, and love to each other and those we serve. Now therefore be it resolved that the Columbus City Schools Board of Education hereby recognizes February 4th to the 8th, 2019 as Relationship Week 2019.
Is there a second? Second. Moved Reyes and seconded Ragland. Ms. Ward, would you like to address the board?
Yes. President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, and Internal Auditor, and members of the board. First of all, let me say thank you. There have been committee members who have been working on this for quite some time, and if I can indulge, let you know that it is a cross-department endeavor. In order to pull this off, there's a lot of work that goes in trying to pull off a district event for buildings as well as departments. And so I want to make sure I have a call out to the wellness department, our communications department, our counselors and social workers, our bargaining units who are part of this process, teaching and learning, our family ambassador representatives, as well as teachers and administrators and community partners. And so one of the things, I don't know if you saw the theme in the week, but what we really tried to do was infuse trauma-informed practices. We infused restorative practices. We also met with our partnership with Sandy Hook Promise and No One Eats Alone. And then we included our PBIS process. And so a part of that was to be able to show that not one of these entities is solo, that they are all aligned and they are working collectively and jointly with the district and what we are trying to accomplish to make sure all of our families feel safe, supported, and receive a quality education. So thank you very much for this opportunity and the acknowledgement of the week.
And Ms. Ward, I'd like to thank you for your leadership on this district-wide initiative, you and your entire team. Would you like to introduce a team member you may have with you?
I do. So this is William Mitchell. He is our new supervisor in the Department of Social, Emotional, and Student Support Services.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. We have a motion before us, a resolution before us. Mr. Treasurer, would you like to call the roll on that resolution?
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Ms. Adair? That motion carried.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ward, would you mind coming forward for a photograph, please? Thank you, Ms. Ward, and your entire team. Thank you. Let's move on to item 4.2, and this is a resolution recognizing February 4th through 8th as National School Counseling Week 2019. So I'd like to ask Marcy Drafts to approach the podium, or perhaps Ms. Ward, and I'd like to ask Board Member Adair to read a resolution.
Columbus City Schools resolution to recognize February 4th through 8th as National School Counselor Week for 2019. Whereas school counselors are employed in our schools to help students reach their full potential, and whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to career awareness and development, enabling them to be ready for success. And whereas school counselors help parents focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social growth of their children, and whereas school counselors work with teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves, and whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society, and whereas comprehensive developmental school counseling programs are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success in school, and whereas our school counselors are critical to the district's spirit of success. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Columbus City School Board of Education hereby recognizes February 4th through 8th, 2019 as National School Counseling Week 2019.
That's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Ward, good evening.
Hello. I do want to take a moment to just thank the board, thank our administration for the support that they give to school counselors, and recognizing and continuing to help not only just the board and our district and our community realize the potential and the amount of work that school counselors do in helping our young people navigate. So as a representative and as a mom for people, and I have a middle school daughter, and I sent a private thank you to my school counselor today to just thank her for all the work and helping to navigate this journey with our students, both academically and socially and emotionally, with all the demands that are on the school counselor and all that they have to do. They continue to pull this out with poise and with grace, and I'm just honored to be able to be a part of this process with them and this journey with them. And so I thank all of you, and to our interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford, for all your support across the board for every program that I'm over. Thank you.
And Ms. Ward, is this a school counselor that you have with you?
This is Kate Webster. She is one of our amazing school counselors, but she serves as a high school resource counselor.
Okay.
And I'm a former Kenwood mom.
Very good.
When it was K through 8.
Very good. All right. Then we have a resolution before us. We have a motion duly made and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Ms. Adair? President Baker?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. It's hard to overstate, I think, the importance of school counselors. And I know that they do a lot more than they used to do when I was in school. So, having said that, would you mind coming forward so we have a picture with our school counselor in it? Let's take a quick picture. Thank you, Ms. Ward, for your ongoing leadership. Please offer our gratitude to all school counselors that you come in contact with this week. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Then we have a couple other resolutions that I'm going to ask Ms. Gibb to speak to. Ms. Gibbs?
Thank you. President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board, tonight we would like to recognize the loss of two community pillars. Over the last week, we've been dealt two blows of two amazing people who are true friends to our schools and our communities. We have a resolution for them both, but we would like to recognize them with a moment of silence. And after their families, as they are now preparing for the services to memorialize them, we want to invite their families to come here personally so that we can show them our gratitude and thanks. When you talk about partnerships, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go together. And both Mr. Clarence Lumpkin, the mayor of Linden, and Officer Jason Jackson have exhibited that true partnership, the love of our students, the support of our staff, and absolute dedication to our community. Mr. Clarence Lumpkin, affectionately known as the mayor of Linden, has been a stalwart, unwavering, committed advocate for the Linden community and every single school contained within. You often find him walking or advocating on a task force, and he always put his community and his family and our students first. And for that, we are absolutely grateful. And Officer Jackson, who is an alum of West High School, was an outstanding officer in his own right, who always worked not just the community festivals, the Mamie Moore Park Live and Jazz, but was very active in the Explorer program and was a champion for encouraging young people to join the police force. He often bridged those very tense moments between the police, between the media reports of police shootings, and you would see him in the community providing ease and resolve and a warm smile and many hugs to our young people, letting them know if you don't have to fear everyone, you have one friend, and he was it. We are all deepened and saddened by both of their departures in 1 week, and that we know that they have made a true impact on our district and the lives of our students, and we will be forever changed by their work and their service. So we can offer just a quick moment of silence in their memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. And is that a motion that we adopt resolutions 4.3 and 4.4?
I move that we adopt the resolutions.
And is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. Treasurer?
Vice President Cole?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Ms. Adair? President Baker?
Yes.
And Mr. Brown? Motion carried.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Let's move on then to hear from our direct reports, and I will look first to Superintendent Dr. Stanford.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Board of Education. If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in great ways. Those are the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I begin my report tonight with that quote to recognize and honor all of the small acts of kindness that have been performed and shared by students and staff across our district today, and to also showcase how they are having a great and magnificent impact on our celebration of the 3rd annual Columbus City Schools Relationship Week. As you know, strong relationships are essential to a successful learning process for our students, and they are an important part of the work that we do in Columbus City Schools. This week, in conjunction with National School Counselor Appreciation Week, we are encouraging all students, staffs, and stakeholders to think about relationships and the role that those relationships play in building the right culture and climate inside all of our schools, administrative buildings, and across our entire community. Civility is important. Today, our theme has been around the notion of one random act of kindness. To mark those acts of kindness, we have supplied hundreds of stickers to every school sharing the Heart of CCS logo. Those hundreds add up to thousands, and imagine if every person in Columbus City Schools participated today, well, that would mean that our district would have generated more than 60,000 acts of kindness across the city today. And that, my friends, is very impressive. And I would also like to take a moment to thank Director Johnson and Council Member Elizabeth Brown for inviting us to the city on Monday, to the City Council meeting, to share our Relationship Week information and also to talk about a random act of kindness and their willingness to join us in this effort today to spread kindness across our community. There is still time to participate and have an impact on a person today with a random act of kindness. We still have a few more hours in the day. So commit to have one act of kindness before you go to bed and call it a day tonight. Relationship Week continues tomorrow with our theme of forgiveness, as we encourage students to be brave and adults to be brave and offer an apology for something they may have done unintentionally that offended another person, or to find an opportunity to forgive someone and bury old grudges that prevent new relationships and friendships from developing. On Thursday, our theme is No One Eats Alone, because the lunchroom is the perfect place to make sure that everyone feels included and accepted. Unfortunately, one of the most disheartening scenes in our schools is to see a student being shunned or not allowed to sit with others at lunchtime. I know that feeling personally. It is not a good feeling because you take it personally and you feel inadequate as a result of it. And finally, on Friday, we will proclaim our theme of Safer Together. It is the perfect conclusion to the week of relationship building because we know that we are truly safer together when all of us work together to prioritize safety and act as one to protect each other. I encourage this board and our community partners to join us, if they haven't already, and help us celebrate Relationship Week throughout Columbus City Schools, because you too can do small things in a great way if you just give an effort. Before I go any further, there is some important work that this Board of Education must complete. It is that time of year to hear and then confirm our calendar for the upcoming school year. At this time, I invite Dr. Roush to provide a brief presentation which will serve as the first reading or the first hearing on our 2019-2020 district calendar. Dr. Roush?
Thank you, Dr. Stanford. President Baker, Vice President Cole, and members of the board, as Dr. Stanford said, it is time for the public hearing on the school calendar. For our new board members who may or may not be aware, there was a statutory change a couple years ago. They amended 3313.48 of the revised code, and it requires now that there's a public hearing before the board adopts any calendar. Also traditionally with the school district, this board has negotiated a number of aspects of its school calendar, including the start and end times and the breaks, as part of the collective bargaining agreement with the Columbus Education Association, and then also with the OPSI affiliate in regards to one of the professional development days. So with that, we'll get underway. Not only is the hearing requirement a part of that statutory provision I just recited, but there's also sets the minimum school year. And those minimums are for, as you can see ahead of you, they break down into grades K through 6 and then grades 7 through 12. And those are the statutory minimums that we have to make sure we meet. So that, as we call calamity days, or we have days off of school, this kind of starts to tick down the number of hours that we're in. We have to make sure that at a minimum we meet these particular thresholds. Now, the state allows us to go ahead and count some other time as part of that day. They allow up to the equivalent of 2 school days for professional development and up to the equivalent of 2 school days to kind of account for parent-teacher conferences. So those actually get added back up and are credited back to the hours of the schools, if you will. However, lunch and breakfast and extracurricular activities are not included. That's by statute. They are not included as part of that calculation. We also have Board Policy 8210. Which actually is somewhat of a recitation of the same statute that essentially says that we need to talk about, the board needs to talk about topics that need to include, but are limited to, number of hours in the year, length of the day, and the beginning and end dates of instruction. The hours are essentially a mathematical computation based upon when the start date and the end dates are and when the breaks are, and which of those particular dates are allowable under statute to be counted. And given the fact that all of our schools have slightly different times, we have elementary schools are allowed to have additional recess time, so that, again, anything in excess of 30 minutes for our students in grades K through 6, they have to go ahead. If there's anything in excess of those 30 minutes, that actually reduces the amount of instructional time as part of that calculation. The fact that we have different times is dedicated to lunch in our middle and high schools. Each building has a slightly different number of total hours each year. However, it is important to note that all of our schools are positioned to exceed the statutory minimums that are set forth in 3313.48. The length of the school day, another item that's kind of governed by the collective bargaining agreement. Our elementaries and K-8s operate in about a 6.5-hour day, typically 9 to 3:30. And then our middle and high schools operate on a 7-hour school day, again, typically about 7:30 to 2:30. So the part you've all been waiting for, these are the actual proposed dates. So for all of the schools except for Woodcrest, and I will present them they'll present them separately here. Teachers will report on Monday, August the 19th. Students will report on Thursday, August the 22nd. You can see the last student day and last teacher days there in front of you. Winter break, spring break, same traditional times that the district has used in the past. It's important to note that these dates were worked out with the Columbus Education Association. These are the dates as they polled their members that they preferred, and so they happen to also be the same times that we use most typical years and the administration is fine with. For the year-round school, slightly different. The teachers will report, as you can see, on a Monday in July, with students reporting the Wednesday thereafter. It's important to note the winter and the spring breaks are the same for the Woodcrest students. Professional development days, we again this year have front-loaded one of the professional development days at the very beginning of the school year. That's that Wednesday right before students report. There's also the Friday in October. That's part of our agreement with OPSI that we give that third Friday time for them to have their OPSI day. And then we have election day again, as a number of our schools are polling locations. We want to make sure that we have that those buildings are safe, and we don't, as we have a number of folks coming in and out of the building, it just is a good safety mechanism. Also this year, what's being proposed is that we'll continue the 1.5-hour early release on the second Wednesday of the month from September through March. For the year-round school, because they start earlier, they have a different PD schedule. They actually will be their first PD day that August the 23rd, and then Friday, September the 20th. They're on intercession during the particular October PD date, and then they'll use Election Day as well. They also have the hour-and-a-half early release with the exception of January, again, because they're in intercession. I'll address that here in a moment. Records days, those are set through per the collective bargaining agreement, with the exception of the third quarter, which, in working with CEA for consistency, is also that Wednesday following the close of the grading period. Then the final records day is that last teacher work day right after students leave. Same for the year-round schools. They have their first records day is slightly different, but then their calendars align thereafter, so we have the same records days. And then for the year-round schools, they have an intercession. So they have their fall intercession dates will be Monday, the 14th of October through Friday, the 25th. They have one right after winter break, and then spring break is their spring intercession is a little different in that the first 4 days of they have 4 days off. Then there's the Friday of spring break. The following week is spring break, and then 1 week right after that spring break. So it's kind of think of it as kind of sandwiching the spring break there. But that's that spring intercession that exists. Because of the statute, we have to give 30 days. We will have the calendars, the final calendars for you for adoption at your March 19th meeting. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I have.
Superintendent, do you want to entertain questions on the calendar at this time from board members? Okay, questions specifically on the calendar, Mr. Ragland.
Dr. Ross, my first question concerns the start date in August. Was there any discussion around moving that start date into the future due to the facilities challenges that we've experienced over this school year with schools being overheated, and we missed several days in the month of August because of my daughter's school, I think of specifically, was very warm in the building starting very early. Did we have a discussion around potentially moving the start date to September to give us a little bit more leeway to address that potential heating issue?
President Baker to Board Member Ragland. Again, this is part of the discussion we have with CEA. This was a date that their members liked. I would like to note that not this past year, but the year prior, we called heat days in late September. And I remember being in early October with an almost 85, 90-degree day as well. So, while we do have those heat, while August can certainly have some more heat, we also just as likely to have that in September or October as well, it seems. Unfortunately, given where we are these days, and I think Dr. Stanford wishes to chime in as well.
Baker, to Mr. Ragland, I just wanted to add real quickly that if we were to move the start date later into September, that would mean we would go into June a whole lot deeper, which would definitely guarantee heat days on the other end of the calendar.
And if I may add one other piece, it's the state doesn't change its testing dates. So the later we start, that's less instructional time that we have overall to provide to our students prior to before we go to those state examinations.
Thank you. Yes, sir. My next question concerns our other partners in education through Central Ohio. Knowing and understanding that we are the largest district within the region, how do we work with our other partners in at least alerting them to, the potential of these types of start dates? Are we in a room with them discussing what they are doing, what they are seeing, so that there's a spirit of kind of cooperation as we do our planning process and making sure that our calendar is lined up for not just our students, but at least in some ways, in whatever ways we can, complements that of our other partners in education around the district.
President Baker, to Board Member Ragland, I think we work very hard, very closely to try to make sure we're communicating that information. I think part of the nice thing is that our school year, our start and end dates are fairly standard. We don't vary them very much. I know that we make a point, it's actually helpful if we can adopt multiple calendars, because then we have that going in years forward. The earlier, certainly we can adopt a calendar that gives more time, so that's, I think, why we want to get it in front of you now, so that they can start planning, Rex and Park can start making, their arrangements for summer camps and things like that. So that's why we're trying to get this process moving, so that we can really kind of get that rolling.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Gibbs, yes, sir.
Yes, thank you so much. A quick question in terms of process and policies. I see that we have the calendar. Are we soliciting input from parents about how well this works and how well this works with their schedule? Because this is, and I know we got a lot of days, but our students and families are the largest consumers of this schedule. And so have we done surveys? Have we got feedback? Have we got input? I understand what the adults are going to go back and forth about, but how are we getting input from our students about how well this works?
President Baker to Board Member Gibbs, I don't know if we're conducting any particular surveys of students to get their particular sense of things. I know that as I've worked on the calendar over the last several years and talking with different parents, I know that I think there's we've got that Friday PD day. We've kind of put that first PD day at the beginning of the year, so we're not trying to throw one later in the fall or early into winter in the middle of the week. I don't know that we've done any surveys of parents. I don't know that we've done any surveys of students. I can't speak to that.
I would offer, since doodle poll is really quick, that we find a way to get feedback specifically from elementary parents, because when we are talking about the days and however we configure them, but when you're talking about 90 minutes early and then a day off and how close they are or not, that becomes a working issue. And it becomes a scheduling issue. When you have tag team parents, it's okay. When we have parents that, as we know by our demographics, are single-headed households, I just would like to have them give some input around how well it would best serve and the timing and the spacing, how well that would best serve them, so that not just from the parents, but the babysitters and grandmas and the aunties that got to do pickup. For elementary and middle schools. For high schools, we have a concept that they're old enough to be home alone, but that doesn't account for special ed students, and it doesn't account for multiple students that all have to be home at the same time to make it work. So I just offer a quick 3-question poll or some type of feedback that we can get that I think would serve both sides. For the board, for the administration, and I know for our bargaining agreements. So we have data from our number one fans and the number one people who are got to be constrained to this calendar. I think that will help us really think about how we should move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Other questions on the calendar, colleagues? Dr. Rausch, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gibbs?
I'm sorry. So to that point, that was a suggestion, but I know you want to hear from a consensus of the board for that to move forward. So can you make sure you get back to us to let us know if you can get parent feedback? I don't want that to just fall and then we come back and it's not done. Just, can you get back to us and let us know if it's feasible, if you can get it done, and if so, just what you did and what your response was.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs.
And do you need consensus from everyone to say that's?
Mr. President, I'm in support.
Vice President Cole, all right. Mr. Brown, I saw your hand.
Yes, I just wanted to comment that one of the things that I learned well during my first 15 years of school board service is to have as small a role in the process as possible, and to allow the administration and our bargaining units to work those things out and present it for our adoption. But I've never wanted to be much of a decision maker on that particular thing because it's a no-win. Every other part, I'm happy to make tough decisions, but that's one of the toughest.
Ms. Gibbs.
I appreciate that, Board Member Brown. It's just a gentle encouragement to make sure we have parents and student voices at the table while you're considering it. While we're considering what it looks like on paper, I just want you to really consider and get feedback from those who have to live with the decision. Having 3 kids in 3 different schools, yeah.
Thank you.
It's important.
All right, so, Mr. Superintendent.
Mr. President, members of the board, next up is the latest update on our academic surge efforts. Despite winter conditions on the roads, our first Saturday Super Reader Academy happened 2 weeks ago. We drew an impressive crowd, nearly 600 students. And though we had to cancel this past weekend because of the snow and the cold weather, we are expecting even more students. As many as 800 of our students and more have signed up and registered to participate in this Saturday's Super Reader Academy. I have to take a moment to share some of my interactions with the students who attended the first academy and the staff, and I cannot say enough about the staff who were there to support our students, from the bus drivers to the administrative assistants, to the principals, to the teachers. We all came together as a family to support our students during that first Saturday Academy. I met one young man at Southwood Elementary School who told me emphatically that he is going to pass the third grade reading test this year, and that's why he was at Southwood that morning. His passion and his belief in himself convinced me that day that he will achieve his goal this year. In the faces of all the other second and third graders who attended that first Reader Academy, I could see them taking seriously the task of learning the lessons that the teachers were sharing with them. And I could see learning was taking shape and taking place in every classroom that I visited. And get this, there were no complaints from any of those students about coming to school on a Saturday morning in order to get better at reading. Instead, what I saw was a vested interest in the material and a vested interest by our teachers in working with them and actively engaging them with each and every young person in the room. As I mentioned, the staff were just as engaged with making sure that our students were having a fun and enlightening experience. I'm sure you saw the pictures on social media of our bus drivers, and yes, me too, coming down the hallway with a red Super Reader cape. And if you don't have one, you got to check out Scott Varner to get you one. There is truly a surge of energy behind this Super Reader effort among our students, our staff, our families, and our community. At the Saturday Academy on February the 16th, we will encourage our parents to stick around so that we can provide them with free resources and strategies to promote reading skills at home and empower them to work with their students to make sure that they are ready. For example, we will give them some tips and tricks on how they can turn story time into learning time. We will provide them with some ideas on the right kinds of questions to ask their child when they are reading aloud at home. The Super Reader Academies are just one piece of our overall SURGE strategy, a strategy that's built around engaging and empowering our students, our teachers, and our families to be part of creating academic success for each and every one of our second and third grade students. All three of those pieces are coming together under the leadership of Ms. Gillison, Ms. Donaldson, and Ms. Kelly as they continue to surge forward with their efforts. And you got to know this, because we met this morning in our executive leadership team meeting, and we had Ms. Kelly give us a update on the surge work. And so, Ms. Kelly, can you share with the board how many individuals are working with you on this surge effort out of your office? So all of this work is being done by her and 4 other individuals. And remember, this is providing those professional development days that we've had with our teachers, where we've had over 400 of our teachers showing up each and every day. Now we're having 800 students who are coming to Super Reader Academies, and then the last phase is bringing our families into this effort to give them the tools that they need to help our students?
So out of my office, we have 4 elementary curriculum coordinators that are really laying the groundwork. And there's 4 of them to really lead and pull off the largest Super Reader Academy we've had in our district history. And to Dr. Stanford, we actually are at over 102% capacity registration for Saturday Super Reader. And so what I shared this morning, and I'm going to share it again because I really want it to be public, this is the largest Super Reader Academy that encompasses 7 sites, second and third graders. And the reason that we were able to pull this off with the 4 that I have, first of all, they're amazing. Amazing group of educators who give 110%. But we also have an amazing transportation department. We have an amazing communications department. Our IT team has been phenomenal. Our teachers, our IAs, our custodians. We have a great picture of our custodian on the piece of equipment that polishes the floor with his cape flying in the background. So it has definitely been a very special, collaborative team effort that really is an illustration of what the Columbus Spirit is all about. So every day, I encourage you to come out on our Saturdays and see the kids. They really are so excited, and the families are so excited. And please make sure you write down March 16th, because that is the day that our kiddos get their own Super Reader capes and masks. And so that's a very special day. So if you can't make any of the other Saturdays, try to really make that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. So I hope you the board, those who are in attendance this evening and those who are listening tonight, can see, hear, and feel the energy, and that you can feel that we strongly believe that when we can harness the energy and outcomes of these 3 pieces of families, students, and our teachers, that we can and will see immediate improvements on our state report card through these efforts. Another strategy that we hope to harness and energize people to focus their efforts on is to level up. We've used this term often over the last several weeks, but I've asked our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Alicia Gillison, to provide you with a little bit more insight into our district efforts to level up and the challenge that she has issued to every one of our schools and our teams all across the district as we approach our testing windows in March. Ms. Gillison, please provide the board some level up energy.
Absolutely. Thank you. President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahoric, Internal Auditor Smith, Director Johnson, and Dr. Stanford. Thank you for this opportunity for me to share our Level Up Challenge. And before I go into the Level Up Challenge, the term level up has a dual meaning. So the term level up that I will be using tonight is to describe the support that we are putting around our classroom teachers. What is very, very important for everyone to understand is that the teachers are at the point of impact. They make the difference. And the research says time and time again, the greatest influence on a child's growth, academic growth, and development is an inspired, passionate, expert teacher and school leader. So tonight, I'm going to call our teachers our instructional leaders. So Level Up is an opportunity for all of us to support the work that's done at the point of impact. When large numbers of people have a deeply understood sense of what needs to be done and see their part in achieving that purpose, coherence emerges and powerful things happen. Just think about that for a second. So our Level Up Challenge is not only our building leaders, it's not only our teachers, our students are taking ownership in their academic success. So our focus in academic services, and this is from our 5-year strategic plan, Priority 1, continuous academic improvement. That's a monumental task, but it's not so monumental when we're all working together, using our collective efficacy. Priority 2, safe and secure learning environments. Priority 3, improve culture and climate. And we had a presentation from Cheryl Ward and her team, and I just have to show you all my 2 hearts today that I got for random acts of kindness. And Priority 4, talent development and recruitment. This is our focus. This is what gets us up every day. So when we talk about Level Up and how this relates to the work that we have to do, let's go back to the report card that we got back in September. There are 6 components on that report card: achievement, progress, at-risk K-3 readers, gap closing, graduation rates, and prepare for success. Well, tonight I'm going to talk about how one strategy is going to level up each and every one of those components on the report card. What we're looking at is we're looking at the achievement component. And if you look at that achievement component, 25% measures indicators met. To meet an indicator, our students have to be, it has to be at 80% of our population in each one of the tested areas. That 75% measures every student that takes the test, whether they meet proficiency or not. Once again, the 25% only measures those that are proficient. The 75% measures our kids and the growth that's happening in our schools every day. On your tables, you have a colorful sheet, and that is a sample of one of our schools, and I will walk you through how we're using that methodology to level up. So there are 6 areas, 6 categories. One is untested. You get 0 points if your student does not show up to test. Please keep in mind, parents have an option of whether they want their student to test or not. We don't get points for students that aren't there. Then they're the students that are limited, and they might be limited today, but after we level up, they won't be limited tomorrow. And there's a numeric value associated with that, and that limited is 0.03. Then there's basic, 0.60. Then let's move up. Let's level up. Let's go to proficient, 1.0. Let's take it even higher. Accelerated, 1.1. Let's not stop there. Let's go to advanced, 1.2, and let's level all the way up, 1.3. So as our students take the test, they fall in one of those categories. But let me tell you what the Ohio Department of Ohio Department of Education has provided for our students 5th grade through 12th grade. And they call them projections. And what they've done is they've looked at a student's testing history. What are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? And they did an analytics, some type of analytic tool, and they came out with a projection on how students are going to perform. Every one of our students in grades 5 through 12, the state has made a projection. That's nice. What we want to do is we want our young people to make a projection on how they're going to do on that test. Now, how would they make that projection, Ms. Gillison? Well, we have that second packet you have are the performance level descriptors. The Ohio State tests are directly aligned with those descriptors. So our young people in class would say, On all of your descriptors, it takes you, what does it look like to be limited? What does it look like to be basic? What does it look like to be proficient? What does it look like to be accelerated, advanced, and advanced plus? So imagine that you're a student and your teacher gives you a green marker and a yellow marker. And with that green marker, she has you highlight those areas that you are strong in, that you are very confident in. Now take that yellow marker and highlight those areas where we need some extra work, right? Right there, the young person has it. But not only does that young person have it, part of the Level Up Challenge is our students are taking ownership. Then we're holding parent meetings, parent-teacher conferences are coming up next week. That same information, the markers might not be green and yellow, but our teachers are sharing with the parents at parent-teacher conferences. This is where your student projected they would be. This is where the state projected they would be. And this is the work that we have to do at home to make sure we level them up.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, watch me. Level up, 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 level up.
I like that. Sorry. All right, so, and this is an actual school here. So here's an actual school, and if you look at the side with the red, that was their grade last year, their performance level, their performance indicator, 44.7. That's not good. That's why it's red. You take those same number of students. So untested, last year they had 7. Let's say this year they only have 4. You go to limited, last year they had 58 students that were limited. This year they've leveled some up. And so you see those numbers are going up, 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 and up. Green is good. So this school, if they use those numbers, the projections, the performance level descriptors, they can instinctively move their students up to the next level. And this was for our audience that's not here. Here is a performance level descriptor for proficient student in 5th grade ELA. And these performance level descriptors are on the Ohio Department of Education's site. Schools will have them for the parent-teacher conferences. Teachers are using them, building administrators are using them, and a parent can go to the ODE website if they don't get it from their school and just put in their child's grade, and the performance level descriptors are right there. What we're doing is creating a culture of readiness. Here is a sample of the 10-week Level Up Challenge for the high schools. We have Level Up Challenges for high schools, for middle schools, for elementary schools. Every school in our district has a Level Up Challenge. Now, we weren't so prescriptive to say everything you had to do, but there were basic tenets that every challenge had to have. Students had to take ownership and make projections. Those projections have to be shared with parents with the information and the performance level descriptors. Practice tests. Students need to be able to practice on this test. We actually did a practice test with members of our public engagement committee, and it was eye-opening, to say the least. Am I correct, Board Member Reyes? There were several things that came out of that meeting. One thing, one member of the public engagement committee, I didn't have them take a full-length test, a 15-minute test. One member said, it took me 7 minutes to figure out how to navigate the technology. And then I realized I only had 7 minutes left, so I just started clicking everything. Imagine how our students feel. Another member of the Public Engagement Committee said, this format is not what our young people are used to, right? So more practice. So we're asking for 2 practice tests, one for content and one for navigational skills. And if a teacher would say, well, I've already given the practice test, that's wonderful. Check it off, because we're not that prescriptive. What we're trying to do is provide those teachers that have the heavy lift with the support that they're going to need. And that's support from our students taking ownership, parents being involved, and the community being involved. It's all of us coming together. It is a collective synergy, a collective efficacy. Level up. Teachers and building leaders capacity, we're leveling up. Student capacity, they're taking ownership, and there you are, family capacity. Because we always hear it takes a village. This challenge is challenging everyone to level up. Our current level up plans, I shared with you all school divisions. That's every school has a plan. Special education did a level up plan. How are they going to support our students? EL, our English language learners, our EL department has a level up plan. Gifted, Career Tech, our amazing counselors, our public engagement committee. I challenged them. And City Year has turned in their level up plan. PACT has turned in their level up plan. And our accountability team. So how are we supporting and helping our students level up?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me.
Okay, all right. All right, so here's the part where I challenge everyone in this room to level up. I challenge our board members to level up. We have super reader academies. Come out, put on the cape. Make a phone call to the parent. Let's level up. Let's sit down and have a conversation with a young person and say, what did you project? What's your projection? And if they say, I'm going to be proficient, you say, no, we're going to make sure you go up one. And we're going to take them up, and we're going to continue to level up because that's what we do. That is the spirit of success in Columbus City Schools. Thank you.
For Ms. Gillison, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you again for that presentation, particularly to our two new board members, to give them a good breath of what our initiative is. You mentioned reaching out to parents. My first year on the board, I had the opportunity to do that. How do we do that again? How do you make that available for us to be able to call and, advocate, inform, and encourage?
All right, we can work with our communications department so that we can get the word out.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. Level up.
Board Member Brown.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to say, Ms. Gillison, that your presentation and this level up answered some of the questions that I had concerning the first presentation, which dealt with super readers. The questions that I had while listening to the super readers, and yes, there's excitement and there's effort and there's all kinds of neat things, and the numbers of people are wonderful. But I was wondering, how do we tie those to our need to get out of an F state report card situation? How do we know those efforts, as great as they are being effective? And that's my concern there. And at least to a great extent, I think your presentation answered much of that about how do we know we're being effective. We are an F school district. How do we get out of that? And are we making progress? And are we doing the effective things to change that?
To President Baker, to Board Member Brown's question, yes, unfortunately that grade is there. But all of our efforts, it will not be there next September. So you asked, what are we doing to be very effective? We're putting systems in place. And so when we talk about, well, let's talk about the Super Reader Academy. Last year, we had about 400 students. And those students that attended the Super Reader Academy, we have data to show that there was growth. So that is why we took that particular strategy and we said, not 400, let's make it 800. And not just third graders. What about if we give second graders those skills so that when they're in the third grade, we won't have to do this. We won't have to reach so deep. And then you think about what we're doing with the Level Up. And those performance level descriptors are directly aligned to that state assessment. And when we use those and level our young people up, we will get the F off of the report card. But I want us to be really clear. There is so much more to educating our children than just focusing on the test. And I think when you look at students like Playon Patrick that was here today and the other amazing students that we have, but right now, you're right, it is critical that we level up that grade.
Good.
Superintendent.
President Baker, to Mr. Brown, if I can add on a little bit to what Ms. Gillison has already stated, and that is, when you look at the information that we're able to get from the Ohio Department of Education in terms of the analytical projections, with these descriptors, now our teachers can combine that with the tools that we have provided them through the Super Reader Academies and the investment that this board has made in the iReady and the Achieve 3000
Progress
tools
Monitor, yes.
that our teachers now have available to them. All of those things are coming together to really arm our teachers, not only with the resources of what strategies and best practices can move our students forward, but now they have more information about the challenges that each and every student has in order to achieve success in the classroom. And so all of that information is coming together, and these professional development workshops are helping our teachers to understand how they can use all of this information in order to develop the strategies they need in the classroom.
I appreciate that very much. And, you know, I am happy to see the direct relationship and you know, where we can demonstrate that, yes, these are the right measures, these things are working. You know, and I recognize and fully agree that there's lots more to education than what's measured by the state.
That's right.
Absolutely.
But we do have a short-term, urgent situation that if we don't solve, we won't have the opportunity to do the rest of the good work that's needed. So, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Board Member Brown. And I'll just close with 2 weeks ago, or about a week ago, and had a very good conversation with our CEA partners, and they are in 100% support of the Level Up campaign, and we need to wrap those supports around our teachers, and it can't just be us. It has to be everyone. But at the end of the day, our students have to take ownership as well, and that's that comprehensive accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillison. I think there's some additional questions and comments. Board Member Ragland.
Kudos to you and the administrative team, Ms. Gillison, for everything that you're doing. I've heard from several educators and throughout the district who are excited about this program and its implementation. The one thing I want to make sure that we're doing is making sure that we are tracking a lot of the best practices that we have, because I've seen this program being implemented in different levels at different schools. And I'd like to call out one of our wonderful educators, Ms. Karen Shapiro at Columbus Global Academy, for taking this initiative. And now she is serving as on a volunteer level as an incentive coordinator for the Level Up program specifically at CGA. And she's incentivizing implementation of the Level Up strategies with fidelity to not only her peers, but also the students in the building. And some of these best practices that are happening around the district, where these wonderful, talented educators are coming up with ideas that fit into the program that help move our students forward. We want to also track those as well, so that it's not just happening in one particular area. If it happened there and it worked very well, let's create a culture where we can share that throughout the district. Kudos to you. You know I've been very interested in this, and you've helped me to understand it better, and I am so happy to see that this is up and running and showing results already. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Member Ragland. And I have to thank the academic service team, the building principals, our school leadership, executive directors, and once again, I can't say it enough, we have to thank our teachers because they're at the point of impact. So we want them to know we're right there with you and we're leveling up.
Board Member Gibbs.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. You know, my mom told me it's not what you're called, it's what you're answered to. So I'm going to respectfully disagree. We are not an F district, because that would imply that that's who we are. We are a district that currently has an F with no intention on keeping it. And so I want to make sure people understand that this is a very temporary station and we're going to throw everything we got at it to move from this spot. And as we bring everyone in and we bring people to get it done, my question is around the practice tests and the licensure. Are the practice tests available at our after-school partners, at our libraries, at our churches? Have we distributed them to our other places so that the school is not the only place where you can access it, but they can practice at the library, at the YMCAs, at the central community houses? Have we been able to penetrate or distribute that through our community partners?
We definitely can share that information, but the practice test can be accessed online on ODE's website, as well as ODE has previous released questions for our students. So parents, and that's support and resources that our parents are going to get. They're going to get the website, the link, so they can just go straight to the link. And the performance level descriptors.
On the website at ODE.
Yes.
I got that, but bringing it down to a parent, I just got off work and I got to get dinner on the table in an hour and a half level, but my child might go to Latchkey or they might go to the neighborhood rec center. Is there a way that we can make sure the practice tests are loaded so when the kids are there, we can do a tag team and say, hey, if you got kids there, how about dedicating 30 minutes so that they can practice? Is there a way? I didn't know if it's licensed and that it's a licensure issue. We only pay for the license to be on so many machines, or if we're able to put it other places.
We're able to put it any place that has internet that can access the Ohio Department of Education's website. But what we can do, and part of our Level Up Challenge, is getting that information out so that our other community partners have that information.
Okay.
Board Member Reyes.
That's something that was brought up in the Public Engagement Committee on what are the tools, so we're going to talk about that a little bit later. What are the tools that are necessary for our children and our parents and our community to have, and then how do we get those out? So we just had our first meeting. We're getting ready, like Ms. Gillison said, we had a lot of questions. Not only getting the tools out there, is we got to understand that our kids learn in a different way. So how are we going, what are the strategies to talk about when we, it's like, just like my daughter, she practiced her ACT, SAT on her phone, and she's pressing A, B, or C. You look at the practice test, it's not anything, it's how we, maybe even our parents took tests. That's how when she's talking about you can't scroll and anyone has an opportunity to go out and look at it and take it. When you're talking, you get a picture and then you scroll, then you get this paragraph, but you don't understand why there's a picture and there's a paragraph. And then if you're a slow reader, and you're a visual reader, you have half the story, and then the second, it's like 3-4 pages, then you're going back, then it asks you a question, then you have to go back. It's a very, just to get somebody out of, when our kids are used to just going, just let me scroll. First of all, you can't even press on the machine. You have to key it. So we talked about what does that look like? How do we roll it out? Who are our key partners? Who are the churches and the Y? And all, we actually had members of the Y in the room, members of City Year in the room. I Know I Can, PAC, members of our community in the room to talk about how does this small committee then expand to include a bigger committee so that we can expand and get everybody on board. Because the most important thing that Ms. Gillison said is if we don't get our parents and students together to help our teachers and the district move forward, we're not going to move forward. And we've got to do it quickly because, as we all know, as soon as you meet the goal, the goalpost has changed. So today, what you just saw on the screen is something, and next year, that 78.1 that should have been a C will then be who knows what. So we need to move quickly to ensure that, it's like we're going to hit that. And what our strategies are is not just to be a D, it's to be much higher. So we're going to not level up one grade, we're going to level up all the way up. So those are the strategies that we're discussing. Sorry.
And if you need any help from innovation, we'll tag team with that. So that's in process, and that's something we can do. Because of the difficulty of it, I just wonder how well we are educating and empowering and assisting all the other teammates, right? So do we have are we making sure we tackle children's services and grandparents who are raising their children in a session to say, okay, here's computers, because there's computer labs all over the city, and that we're able to do it. So I think you answered that, and I appreciate that, as long as it's able to get out.
Director Johnson, have you a comment?
I do. President.
Thank you.
President Baker, I would be happy to help with that. Most of the after-school providers in the community are part of what we call Partnership for Success. And actually, I think there's a meeting on Friday of all those partners. So we can work through Future Ready Columbus to make sure that they get whatever information you'd like for them to have, whatever practice tests you would like for them to have, because they're all part of this network. So that would be anyone funded by Franklin County Job and Family Services and the City of Columbus, Adam H. Board, Children's Services, and those groups. So we have a network, and I'll be willing to work with you about how we can get information to those providers.
That would be perfect. If we can get it into the daily lexicon and somewhere between Fortnite and Candy Crush and have them do it for about 30 to 45 minutes, then the heavy lift is not just in the building. We're not going to move, this needle doesn't move inside of our buildings alone.
Absolutely.
It has to move in the homes, it got to move in the churches, it got to move in the community, it has to move as a part of an entire community strategy to wrap around our schools and not say it's their issue or it's a Columbus City issue. It's ours. And our city can't be great unless our schools are great. And we're all going to be all in to help level up and everybody move forward. But that also includes, I didn't hear, and I don't know the status of them, but of our broader parent-teacher association, our PTAs. I know that all of our school buildings don't have a PTA. Right? All of them don't have a huge parent engagement. So whatever vehicle it is that we need to bring on board and support as the umbrella PTA organization, they got to be on board too, because they need to level up in bedtimes. We got to level up in structure. Yes. Everybody don't want to hear it, but it doesn't move if your child is staying up till 1 o'clock in the morning and got to be on the bus at 7. That test isn't going to go well. So we need whatever that organization is, and I'm not sure who it is now, to also be a part of it. Because we say families as a loose piece. It's parents, it's caregivers, it's the influencers. So if that's auntie or uncle who actually makes the decisions on what happens, then we need them as well. But I just know what I heard is phenomenal in our community piece, but we have to absolutely focus and call out that parental or the adult caregiver, whoever support, that is, family the guardian, and really give them a very clear, down-to-earth, concise pathway of how they can help. Because these descriptors are very good, but I need something I can pick up at the beauty shop and read and say, oh, this is what I need to ask them. These 5 points I need to ask them after they read the book, and make it usable so everyone can have it as a living, breathing document. Excellent, excellent presentation, and the fact that we're talking about academic achievement is absolutely so relevant to why we're here. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Vice President Cole.
Thank you, very quick.
Thank you.
What kind of access do the parents have to iReady or Achieve 3000 with our students?
I'm going to call the amazing Leslie Kelly up to answer that question.
And when Leslie Kelly comes up, can she introduce herself and talk about her department just very briefly for our new board members?
Oh, yes.
to President Baker. I'm Leslie Kelly. I'm the Director of Curriculum, and so I oversee K-12 and all instruction and curriculum development, resources, professional development, student programming, K-12 for the district. I have a team of 4 elementary coordinators, and then I have a team of 4 high school coordinators, and then 3 special projects coordinators. And I should say the 4 high school coordinators are middle school, high school coordinators, and then 3 special projects are K-12 coordinators. So one does like the Achieve digital piece, another one does STEM in the district, and then the third one does Spruce Run K-12.
Thank you.
And so to answer the question about the access, Board Member Cole, for iReady and Achieve 3000, those are all web-based. So there's parents' portals for those. So for Achieve, for iReady, for example, there is a parent page where parents can go on and get information, and students have access when they go home that they can get on and work on it. So parents can actually sit side by side with them and see what that learning looks like. And so for iReady, once students take the diagnostic, they are put on an individualized path. The diagnostic identifies what a student can do and what are the priorities for instruction, and then a path is individualized for that student. So parents can actually sit there with the student, learn with them, or go through and support their learning. And then with Achieve 3000, the same thing. Parents, there's a parent portal, and parents can then look at that information. And the great thing about Achieve is that one of the things that makes Achieve so powerful in the classroom, if I'm a science teacher, and say I'm doing a lesson on genetics, something with genetics, I can actually, and I have different reading levels in my classroom, which a lot of times in our secondary classrooms, like your science especially, is one that's very difficult. It's how do you provide access to all the students for the content. I can print out lessons, text that is the same content but different levels of reading that will allow all students access to the content and be able to participate in collaborative conversation with that. So you can do the same thing at home.
So thank you for that, because I asked because I actually have on-hands experience with this in the classroom. So when you ask the question relative to, what's the parent involvement, here's a wonderful opportunity to get that on-hands experience with your kid and give a teacher a real-time assessment of where your child is in their development using those 2 programs. So thank you for that.
Welcome. If I could add just to a question somebody asked about the community partners. This week we're actually meeting with the Columbus Metropolitan Library and sharing our lessons around Saturday Super Reader. They've already knew and helped us advertise, but now they're developing a program, and so they want to sit down with us and see what we're doing so that it can tie in. So those connections are being made.
Thank you very much. Board Member Adair, I believe you were next.
Yes, just briefly. Thank you for this. It was great. I love the music. My daughter was here. She'd be dancing in the middle. And I think what's great about it is if that's the message we're also sending to our kids, it is a very positive, upbeat, supportive message. The one thing that I worry about, and the one thing that I know in the work that I do for my full-time job, is that the mental piece of this is very real. And having our kids mentally ready to sit down knowing that they had supportive grown-ups around them helps to combat some of that stereotype threat that they have, knowing that this district has enough and understanding that this test is really important. So the more that we can stay positive as the grown-ups around them, the more that we can support them, the more parents are involved, the more communities are involved, and the more tools we have, I think will help them overcome that. I say that from personal experience because my own daughter is stressed out about these tests in 3rd grade. Right? And so just trying to assure her that I believe in her, I know she can level up, and that's kind of the language we got to make sure. So I wanted to ask, are our teachers receiving any professional development more around those psychological kind of skills around brain development and especially stereotype threat and what happens when a student sits there in front of a computer and kind of now has to perform?
Thank you for that question. President Baker, to Board Member Adair, Yes, we've had professional development opportunities during the Reimagine Me conference that we had last year. There were sessions on brain development. Definitely we can do more. We're planning another Reimagine Me conference coming up this summer for our teachers in those same areas. So thank you for asking that question.
Thank you.
Superintendent?
To Ms. Adair, we also, through Cheryl Ward's team, are very focused on social emotional learning, which also addresses
Right.
some of what you're describing.
I'll be back. Back to you, Board Member Reyes.
So I don't know if this is the appropriate time to share, Ms. Gillison, a sample of what maybe one of our community partners has committed to so that other community partners know what we're asking them to do when they level up.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So as many of you know, we have excellent partners such as City Year in our district community. And as part of the Public Engagement Committee and a challenge from Ms. Gillison was for them to also commit to there's a 7-week level up challenge. We're on the clock, right? So it's really, really quick. You saw a very long calendar up on the screen, but we're talking about 7 weeks because it's just coming around the corner. So an example of what we're asking some of our community members to do is like City Year would be, week 1 would be attendance coaching begins, so 95% club. Week 2, map test prep training with the whole core. So that means all those City Year folks that are working with our kids get the same tools that everyone is getting trained, infused, and lesson planning weekly. Week 3, map growth, coaching begins, City Year staff core members, volunteers, support report card, conferencing with the district in the areas where they're at. Week 4, level up challenge shared with the City Year board members. And if anyone can look up who their board members are, these are different people in different areas like AAP, Huntington, influential folks. So expanding, utilizing those types of tools and expanding to those public and private partners that can also help us reach our goal. So to work with CCS Communications on language information shared with City Year on social media outlets, including in newsletters. Week 5, they're going to be hosting a pastries for parents and asking parents to come in so they can talk a little bit more about the tools that are going on. Week 6, ongoing City Year interventions. Week 7, ongoing interventions. And in here, they've also talked about practice tests so our parents know what's going on. So the intention is when we talked about the public engagement piece and inviting people to it, and I've shared this story before, I have a parent who can't read or write. So how is a parent who can't read or write or doesn't understand how to use technology, how is that parent going to be effective in helping their child? That's when the community come in. Hopefully that we can connect that student with our City Year partner. We can connect it with Columbus Metropolitan Library or other folks. So those are the type of things that we're discussing. We're trying to make sure that we can turn that around rather quickly. So we've got members throughout the community. So just wanted to share a little bit about what we're asking for people. I don't know if that helps a little bit, Board Member Brown, when we're talking about measurable outcomes as we move forward. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Board Member Brown.
Just very briefly, I want to piggyback on what Rhonda has had to say on behalf of the city. While I can't speak for the county, occasionally I get a little bit of insight. And I know that the county and its agencies, many of which you mentioned and participate in that work, and otherwise, JFS in particular, with Joy Bivens, are happy to continue to provide support. And I'll pass along the message to encourage continued support.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Member Brown. We have a preoccupation with focus, and we're trying to be very, very strategic, and we want to ensure that our actions speak so loud, no one can hear our words. And that's all of us coming together, collective efficacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillison. And back to you, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. Gillison, and thank you to the Academic Services team. I hope you are feeling the same energy I'm feeling, that we are leveling. This conversation, we heard about leveling up by city year, by the library, by the city of Columbus, by Mr. Brown talking about the county joining us in this level up effort. So spread the word. Let's make this go viral throughout our community. And like Ms. Gibbs has always said, we know it's viral when we go to the barbershop and we go to the beauty shop and they're talking about level up, then we know it has gone viral throughout this community, and it is definitely having an impact in engaging people in what we're talking about. And that is leveling up with our students, making sure that our students are being successful when it comes around to this state test. So let me close my comments tonight by reflecting on the resiliency of our young students and their teachers and our school staff across this district. They came back to school on Monday after an unexpected 5-day weekend. None of us would have imagined that sub-zero temperatures and 5 inches of snow would be enough to cancel classes for 3 days straight. That's a long time to be out of school, and that's right in the middle of the school year and 7 weeks out from testing. So we have some catching up to do. In fact, about 300 students will need to complete additional E-Day assignments, or as we otherwise call them, blizzard bag assignments, to avoid having to spend extra time at the end of the school year. Let me say that we will always put our safety first. So should those same conditions happen again, we will be ready to act in Columbus City Schools. But I know that none of us truly want to see another snow day this year. Well, at least the adults don't want to see another snow day. But I guarantee you there's some students out there who have got their pajamas inside out, hoping for another snow day. But seriously, that's why I appreciated the energy I saw on Monday from our team members all across this district. Every person was ready to get back into the classroom, get back to work, and get back on track to meeting our goals. Everyone knows that there is work that will need to get done, lessons to learn, and minds to engage. We must have a sense of urgency. We must have a sense of urgency. Let me say it one more time. We must have a sense of urgency. And as Ms. Gillison has said, we must be focused, focused, focused. There are too many of our students that are not ready to succeed. Even in the heaviest of snow and the coldest of temperatures, the spirit of success in Columbus City Schools doesn't take any time off. We must get every student to surge ahead by leveling up. When each student levels up, each school levels up. When each school levels up, this entire district levels up and achieves the true spirit of success that is Columbus City Schools. And with that, Mr. President and Board of Education, that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Stanford. Colleagues, any other questions for the superintendent on his report? Thank you very much for your report. Let's move on then to our internal auditor. Madam Internal Auditor, have your report for the board this evening?
Yes, I do. President Baker, Vice President Cole, and members of the Board of Education. At the January 24th ANA meeting, the committee recommended the approval of basic committee operation documents. The committee approved the meeting dates and the core activity that will take place during each meeting. The meeting dates are on the district website for everyone's information. The committee also suggested updates to the committee charter to reflect the process for succession planning. Currently, we are, I think we're just short one board member, which I'm quite sure will be addressed soon, but we have all of our community members. But in the event that we do have a vacancy, we wanted to make sure that we had a plan in place to address that vacancy. The committee also accepted my declaration of the Office of Internal Audit's organizational independence. The Institute of Internal Auditors professional standards require the internal audit activity must be independent and internal auditors must be objective in performing their work. The Chief Audit Executive must confirm to the board at least annually the organizational independence of the internal audit activity. The Institute of Internal Auditors interprets organizational independence to be in effect when the Chief Audit Executive reports functionally to the board as demonstrated when the following. The board approves the internal audit charter. The board approves the risk-based internal audit work plan. The board approves the internal audit budget and resource plan. The board approves decisions regarding the appointment and removal of the Chief Audit Executive. And the board approves the evaluation and salary of the Chief Audit Executive. All of the above is approved by this board. The purpose of the declaration is to assure the internal audit activity is free from interference in determining the scope of internal auditing, performing work, and communicating results. The Chief Audit Executive must disclose such interference to the board and discuss the implications. And I will report at our last ANA meeting, the committee did ask if a situation were to arise, how would it be handled? And I went through the process and they were satisfied with my responses. The board has approved all of the above. In addition, all auditors have signed statements of independence regarding any audit areas they are assigned to. Based on the previous statements, I confirm the organizational independence of the Columbus City Schools Office of Internal Audit. So before I move on to the reports that were discussed, if there's any questions on that piece, I can entertain questions.
Colleagues, any question on that annual report to the board from the internal auditor? Thank you. Please carry on.
Okay. At the same meeting, the committee approved the release of 1 audit and 2 follow-up engagements. The audit report approved for release was a report of various high school processes. 6 high schools and 2 career centers were selected for audit during our previous fiscal year. The reason for the delay in reporting out on these audits was because of the challenge we had as far as having meetings the later part of 2018. The audits resulted in great cooperation by the school building staff and the operations staff. 8 management action plans were developed, none of a high-risk nature. And for those of you who have been receiving our reports in the past, you know that is huge. Oftentimes our reports do have a lot of high-risk areas, and these reports had no high-risk areas identified. The reports have been sent to the board, and a copy is on the district's website for public viewing. The 2 follow-up engagements were for the Human Resource Audit Report, originally released in 2014, and the Accounts Payable Audit Report, originally released in 2016. Institute of Internal Audit Standards 2500 A1, which doesn't mean anything to anybody except for me, required the Chief Audit Executive must establish a follow-up process to monitor and ensure that management actions have been effectively implemented or that senior management has accepted the risk of not taking action. So these procedures were basically our way to demonstrate that, yes, you know, we're going through and we're seeing that management has taken action to address any issues that were noted during those audits. Sorry about that. The follow-up engagement for human resources indicated 29 of 33 management actions have been implemented. And once again, that's huge. It was a big, heavy lift for our human resource department. There were a lot of serious recommendations stemming from dealing with the fact that, you know, we were in a paper system in a building that had no sprinklers in it, and what to do if we did have a fire or something like that, to the fact of just dealing with documenting our processes and procedures. So it did take a while, but I'm happy to report that 29 of the 33 management actions have been implemented, and the remaining 4, which are, I think, a real easy lift, are being worked on right now, and once they are implemented, we will go back and do a review of those action plans, report back to the board as far as the status of that implementation. And then finally, the follow-up engagement for accounts payable indicated 3 of 12 management actions have been implemented. The reason for that is because a lot of the management actions that came out of that report are being reviewed by an outside consultant who's doing an opportunity study on the processes and procedures in the Treasurer's office. So once that study is released, we can go back in and perform procedures on those additional items that were just not ready for us to test because it would have been basically interfering with the consultants doing their work. So, President Baker, that concludes my executive report.
Thank you, Madam Internal Auditor. Colleagues, any questions for the Internal Auditor? Thank you. We appreciate your report and your diligence on behalf of the district. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Treasurer, that brings us to you.
Good evening.
Good evening. The floor is yours.
Thank you, President Baker. I have nothing to report other than a reminder that on February 13th, which is a week from tomorrow, the Finance and Appropriations Committee will meet right here at 4 p.m.
Thank you very much for your report, Mr. Treasurer. Look forward to seeing you then.
Yes, I will undoubtedly see you as well.
Absolutely. Colleagues, let's take up our consent agenda. Is there a motion that we adopted as presented?
So moved.
All right. Questions, colleagues, on any pieces of legislation contained within the consent agenda this evening? And I will also note that I know that we have at least one abstention. Mr. Ragland will be abstaining on item 16.1. Thank you for the advance notice. Colleagues, questions, comments? Board Member Gibbs?
Just a continual thank you to our community partners. And part of our community fabric, as we've talked about today, the Sam's Pawn Shop, and the donations we're getting from both them and WOSU of almost 250, 260 or so instruments that will help benefit our students in our music program. Just really want to thank them and State Auto and PNC for all of their support for our students. That's in this legislation.
Absolutely. Colleagues, any other questions or comments? Any piece of legislation you'd like to speak to? Seeing nothing. Mr. Treasurer, would you like to call the roll?
Ms. Gibbs? Yes. Mr. Ragland?
Yes, with the exception of 16.1, from which I abstain.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Ms. Adair?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Let's move on then to announcements. Colleagues, have you any very brief announcements or points of pride you'd like to share with the board this evening, Mr. Ragland?
Yes, it's more of a statement, President Baker. We've discussed a lot tonight, and I've heard my colleagues say this before, but I want to reiterate this. We talk about having web access for our families when we are using programs that help us within the surge, within our level up strategies. We have to consistently be mindful of our families that do not have web access when they get home, our students who do not have access to devices that allow them to get on the internet when we're thinking of strategies, which leads me to another discussion about our community partners. Those are some of the things that we should be asking our community partners to help us with. We have technology challenges for many of our families within the district. If we can corral what some of those technology challenges are, we should be asking our community partners to help us with those things specifically. And then the last thing, because I've heard it mentioned several times, and I've done it myself here, is within the disparity of the programming that we have from school to school. Board Member Gibbs reminded me of this when she talked about the fact that we don't necessarily have parent-teacher organizations in every school throughout the district. And for me, I think that that is something that I'd like for the administration to put some extra focus on as we move into, the rest of this year and next school year. There are some boilerplate things that should be consistent across the board in every single school. I should not go to one Columbus City school and not see a PTA or a PTO organization. Every single school should have one. Every single school and every single student deserves to have that. There are some things that are done because of other volunteers, but we should be building an infrastructure that allows for those things to be in place across the board in the district. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk about that, President Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Ragland. Any other comments, brief comments? Yes, Board Member Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. I just wanted to, just to that note, I wasn't going to say anything, but a couple years ago, our Public Engagement Committee worked really hard with the PTA group to develop PTA in a box. So we do have, if any school is interested, we do have a copy of what that entails. It's a very, like if you want to establish it, what do you need? How do you vote for members? The whole thing. So we do have, that was developed about, Director Johnson was on that committee. It was what, 8 years ago? So we do have that access, but it is difficult because you need parents who are available and able to run the PTA. But my comment is around the Super Reader Saturday. I agree with you, Dr. Stanford. I attended the one in Spanish immersion, and I think the one thing that was very interesting is that all the kids that went to the different locations are not necessarily from that school. So when you walked in, you would have thought it would have been chaotic, crazy, I don't know you. To see the kids just come out, and you would have thought all of them were from that school, all of them had been together the whole school year. The teachers knew who the kids were. They had a whole system on who was going to be picked up and who was going to go on the bus, and because that's a little bit different, because your bus that you take to school is different than the bus you're going to be taking to Saturday Super Readers. And amazing teachers, I mean, helping each other out, making sure that the kids were where they're supposed to be, and just also a lot of troubleshooting, right? So parent calls, I forgot to tell you that my kid's supposed to be on the bus, but please know that their cousin is on that bus and they're going to be riding together. So it was a lot of like, okay, making sure that all our kids were safe. Our bus drivers were making sure that they had the right number of kids. They were lined up and ready to go. But most of all, the excitement of the kids. One of my kids was, not my personal kids, but one of my kids was in there, and his mom had him in a readers program last year. And she said it really cost her a lot of money because he's been consistently behind. So we all have that one kid. We have one kid that's behind, and then she's got her second kid who's accelerated. So her daughter is a level and a half up, and son is a level down. She said through the hard work at the school, she definitely feels confident, and little Mateo confirmed that he thinks in 2 or 3 weeks he's going to be reading on level. So, and that's thanks to this program, Leveling Up. So just wanted to share that kudos for them.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just very quickly, again, I want to remind families that this coming week is parent-teacher conferences. Please, please, please take full advantage of that opportunity to sit with your educators of your children and have those rich conversations about where they are. If you are not able to attend, find someone who can attend in your stead. Bring some questions along. More importantly, if you do not have access to Infinite Campus, please, please, please secure access to Infinite Campus. Now, do that at warning, because if you are like me, it will drive you up a wall. But it is an incredible resource to have, to know what your student's performance is, real time, today, right here and now. And final, I ask about Google Classroom. There are assignments that a lot of our wonderful teachers post on Google Class regularly that I encourage you to ask your students when you are preparing them and organizing them to stay on point with their assignments, that they're not just checking Infinite Campus with you, that they're also looking at Google Class as well. So just want to make sure you do that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Brown?
Just very briefly, I know that, both Mr. Ragland and Ms. Reyes spoke about PTA, and I agree fully with the views that were expressed and the importance of having parent organizations in all of our buildings, and the need to identify and recruit parents. But not all of our schools have parent organizations that are affiliated with PTA. Many have chosen not to pay the dues. And just want to clarify that parent organizations, whether they're affiliated or not, are valuable in all of our schools. And
Yes.
let's get it done.
Thank you. Any other super brief announcements or points of pride? Superintendent?
Just wanted to say real quickly that the elementary school fair is this Thursday from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at the Columbus Afrocentric Early College Fieldhouse, and that is 3223 Allegheny Avenue, right off of James Road.
All right, thank you. So last thing I'd like to share is just announcement of board committee appointments. Audit and Accountability will be chaired by Mr. Cole. Serving with him will be Board Members Brown and Reyes. Board External Monitoring Committee will be chaired by Board Member Gibbs. Joining her will be Board Members Adair and Cole. NSDP will be Baker, Brown, and Reyes, all non-voting members, as you know. Public Engagement will be chaired by Board Member Reyes. Joining her will be Board Members Adair and Cole. Innovation and Reform, chaired as always by Ms. Gibbs. Joining her will be Board Members Adair and Ragland. Finance and Appropriations will be chaired by Mr. Cole. Joining him will be Board Members Brown and Ragland. The Policy Review Committee will be chaired by Mr. Brown. Joining him will be Board Members Adair and Ragland. As a reminder, the President serves as a non-voting ex officio member of all committees. And would anyone like to say anything about their committee? For example, the upcoming meeting date, Board Member Gibbs?
Innovation and Reform meets on the second Tuesday of the month, and so our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, February 12th, 5:30 p.m., right here in these chambers. If you are interested in serving, I'm looking at two of my members. I'm Director Johnson and Mr. Tolles, who's serving also as Board External tonight. I thank you for that. Give us a call to our board office, and we'll get you plugged in.
Thank you very much. And if there is nothing else, I will ask the Vice President to offer a motion. Oh, I beg your pardon. Ms. Gibbs.
Can you remind us of the deadline for the high school lottery applications? I think it's January 9th to February 28th. Is that correct? Yes, middle and high school. I don't want parents to miss that.
President,
Superintendent
Ms. Gibbs, the high school, middle school lottery applications will be accepted until February 28th. For elementary school lottery applications, that process began yesterday and will continue through March 29th.
And that goes until March 29th. So if you are, I know that the middle and high school fair was a long time ago, it seems, but you have until February 28th to turn in those applications. And are we still doing tours on Wednesdays for parents and families that want to go and see the buildings?
Mr. Baker to Ms. Gibbs. I'm going to turn to Ms. Gillison. I don't know off the top of my head.
If a parent, President Baker to Board Member Gibbs and the other board members, if there's a parent that would like to tour a school, we ask that you call the school and be very mindful that that third week of March, that's when we start our air testing, our OSTs. So if you want to get into a school, call the school and arrange it with the building administrator. It doesn't have to be on a Wednesday, but work with the building administrator's schedule. Yes, we are open and ready for business and ready to level up.
So parents, if you want to see a school, don't just listen to what you hear. Don't listen to the hype. Don't take other people's word for it. Take time to actually walk through the school building for yourself, observe school in session, and make up your own mind. And finally, I want to thank and really congratulate Miss Lanaya Caslin. Today is her 16th birthday, and although I'm spending it with you, my heart is absolutely with her. So happy birthday, Nana.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Ms. Gibbs. Now, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we recess into executive session per section 121.22 G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment, discipline, or compensation of a public employee.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Ms. Adair? President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs? Motion carried.
Thank you. The board will now recess into executive session. We will adjourn from those chambers without returning to these. Have a good evening. Thank you.